Today's webinar is kind of it's actually a fairly important one, and one of the more important ones, I think. And the reason being that most attorneys in their careers end up getting fired from law firms. It's the substantial majority, meaning probably 85% of attorneys at some point get fired from law firms if they choose to do that as a career. And they get fired as partners, they get fired as associates. Sometimes getting fired could be as simple as just you stop getting work, and and that's a way of getting fired as well. As you think about your career, one of the things that I always stress with my candidates, and it's very, very important, is anybody that you're working for is a client. So meaning any partner that's giving you work, any other partner, if you're a partner that's giving you work, any firm that's hiring you is hiring you to basically they're your client. And so you need to think of everybody you're working for in terms of a client. And if a client doesn't like the work you're doing, or if the client doesn't have enough work, or if there's issues with the client, they don't feel comfortable, then that client will often let you go and find someone else. So thinking about everybody you're working for in terms of a client, I think is one of the most important things that a lot of people miss in their careers because they think of working someplace as more of a job instead of working for a client. So that's one of the first things. As people get fired, what you're supposed to do from that is learn from the experience. One other just quick point I want to make is when we're talking about clients. So partners have clients, and those clients are firing them all the time. So most partners never hold on to the business. There's certain clients forever, and so they will lose clients as well. So in the legal profession, everybody is losing clients. Partners are losing clients. Associates that are working for partners are losing their job, which is the same thing as losing clients. And partners do not take it that seriously. I mean, if they lose a client, of course they're upset, but that's just kind of part of what it is just part of being an attorney is constantly losing clients. So the first thing I just want to make sure you understand is if you have lost jobs, it's actually it's a serious thing, but it's not something that you should define yourself with on your whole career. People, there's all sorts of reasons that I'll talk about today that people get fired and people have to look for a job. And I'm going to talk about those and hopefully, give you some understanding of the things you need to avoid to be successful, which could literally change the entire direction of your career if you understand these things. And then in addition to the things you need to avoid, how to recover from potentially losing positions. This is a live webinar. So that means that at the end of the webinar, I'll take questions, any questions that people have about this or anything related to your career. And the end of the webinars are typically really, really productive if you're asking questions. So throughout the webinar, if you have any questions you can think of, you can put them in the chat and then I'll answer them at the end of the webinar. Or, just write down things that you think may help you. One of the things also for these webinars that a lot of people have told me that helps, if you if you take notes while you're watching this, it can help you because it will help you understand this material. And also what's very important is the warning signs that you could lose a position, when to look for a position, things that you can do and how you can present yourself in law firms so you don't lose positions. And I'll go into all of those things today. And one thing I just want to make sure you understand is that anytime you lose a job or anytime you're in danger of losing a job, you need to actually take certain steps to recover from that. And pretty much everyone can. So over the past few decades, I talked to attorneys literally on a daily basis that have lost their jobs. And I talk to a lot of people each day. Sometimes people are at fault, partly or entirely. In other cases, people lose their job where it's actually no fault on the attorney's part. And a lot of times, if you haven't done anything wrong and you're losing a job, the law firm actually may make you look like the problem instead of them looking like the problem. The law firm environment, there's all sorts of hidden dangers that can cost any attorney their jobs, and people don't often realize them going into any job. And most attorneys, just like I said, if you're trying to work in law firms, you're going to lose positions at some point in your career. You may lose it early in your career. You may lose a position when you get senior. But the most important thing is just to understand that you're not alone. If you've lost a job or you're in danger of losing a job, most people, I would say 85% of people probably lose jobs at some point in their career. This is just inevitable in terms of working inside a law firm. And so you need to avoid losing jobs while you're there. And then you also need to be able to understand kind of the warning signs and how to recover. So I'm going to try to make you aware today of the conditions that will lead you to losing your position. This can happen very, very quickly. I want you to understand that people can lose jobs extremely fast. Like things can happen that you just could never foresee. I had one guy that was a partner recently, and he'd been at the same firm for over 30 years. And there was some sort of dispute in the firm about something. And there were two factions that developed, and he was on a faction that lost and literally had to leave his job immediately. People lose jobs for missing deadlines. People lose jobs for just upsetting one person and making like one comment that happens. People lose jobs because something about their personal life is known that people don't like. So I'm just going to try to help you understand how to avoid these things and to really keep your chances of keeping your job. And that should be the goal. Any place you go, you want to have satisfied clients, because any law firm that you're working for is a client. And so you want to always have people in the background that are satisfied. If you're developing business as an attorney, you want to have satisfied clients. If you're working for other people, you want to have satisfied clients. So your goal really is to be someone that makes everyone satisfied that's dealing with you, because if you do a good job with that, then you'll be fine. One other thing I just wanted to bring to your attention that I think is very easy and very important also to kind of understand. People get into romantic relationships. And if you get into a romantic relationship, a lot of times you'll come up against people where you just don't have the same values, or people are overly sensitive about certain topics and where you just don't click. And it's the same thing with a law firm. People that have bad romantic relationships move on. And you need to do the same thing if different things may not click at a firm. And so understanding why you lose jobs and kind of the issues, around it are important. And the first thing, even though I'm saying that a lot of people lose positions, I just want to be very, very clear that it's extremely important that you understand what I'm talking about today, because losing a job in a law firm is actually a very serious thing. If you lose your job in a law firm, it's going to be much more difficult to find a position at another firm than if you were unemployed. Now, I am amazed. Every day, I have candidates that I talk to that have been unemployed, that have lost jobs, that have lost multiple jobs. And because of my skills as a recruiter, by getting them to find a lot of different types of places and positioning them in the correct way, which I'll talk to you about how to position yourself, I'm able to get them interviews and jobs. As a matter of fact, I think I've gotten 3 people jobs this week, and all 3 of them had periods of unemployment. One guy had been unemployed for 6 months after losing 3 jobs. Another woman had been unemployed for about 3 months. And so I'm able to get people jobs that are unemployed. But the point to understand is that if you lose a position inside a law firm, the law firm with a job opening has 2 people to compare you to. One person is the person that's gainfully employed, that there's no questions about why they're unemployed. And the person that is unemployed, the firm may not know why you lost your job. And so you're more risky. In markets like New York City, where there's tons and tons of people competing for jobs at the top firms, if you're unemployed from a top firm, it gets extremely difficult because there's just so many applications. For each job. So you really need to understand what I'm talking about today, because you don't want to compete with people that are employed, because if you're competing with people that are employed, then it's much harder for you to get the same jobs, because law firms, there's no question that the person's doing a decent job when they're employed. These issues it's not something that the law firm has to worry about in the background. If you're unemployed, they don't know why. Are you unemployed because you did bad work? Typically, the conclusion is that the law firm, that the person wasn't doing a good job servicing the client, which is the law firm. So that's the problem when you're unemployed, because it looks like the firm's wasn't able to make money off you, that maybe they chose to keep other people that were, better at servicing them. They just don't know. So it's very difficult to find another job in certain markets if you're unemployed. That doesn't mean you can't find a job. And I always find people jobs that are unemployed. I mean, if they work with me and do what I ask, which I'll talk to you about what to do if you have questions at the end of the webinar, but your odds are greatly reduced. And so it's very, very difficult to find a job compared to being employed than it is if you're unemployed. And so if you try to work if you lose your job at a prestigious firm, for example, it's going to be extremely difficult to get another job at another prestigious firm. And I see this stuff all the time. I had a candidate that was in North Carolina working at a major law firm, and he got fired, and basically because he wasn't gung-ho enough compared to other associates in the firm at his class level. He ended up having to leave North Carolina and move to New York City to be a contract attorney, which is absolutely insane. He wanted to work at a firm that was just as prestigious, so he took a job there as a contract attorney. But this is someone that was making over $300,000 a year in a law firm, and suddenly can't get another job at a firm of the same caliber and moves there. Now, I could have worked with him and got him something had he not been so desperate, but at the same time, it's very, very difficult. And if you have a gap on your resume, law firms may ask about it for years. So if you lose a job and you're unemployed for 6 months and you take another job, 6 months later, the law firms may ask why why have you been unemployed? Because or why were you unemployed back then? Did you do something wrong? So it's very, very difficult. And many attorneys, after losing their jobs, will go into alternate career paths because they think that's the only thing they should do, or they think that a law firm's not right for them because of what's happened. So they go, like I said, into contract work sometimes. They'll take jobs in-house. They'll work in government positions. Many will open solo practices, and a lot of them will actually be successful having their solo practices. But this is what happens when people lose jobs. And what's important to understand about law firms is you literally can work in a law firm for your entire career. So you can start in a law firm, 25, and you can work in a law firm for 50 plus years. And so there's no need to actually go into an alternate career path, but you want to position yourself as well as you can to stay employed in a law firm, because other options are typically going to pay less. They're going to actually have less security. And, it's not always the smartest thing to do. Some people, when they lose their jobs, will get angry. So people have two kind of responses to losing jobs. Some people will get very, very angry about the fact that they lost the job and try even harder in the next firm, or some people will get sad and kind of give up. So, and a lot of people, if they're very persistent, will be able to get positions in firms that are just as good if they do certain things that I'll talk to you about and rebuild stronger careers. But in general, it becomes, much, much harder. And for a lot of people that lose their jobs, it can be the best thing that ever happened to them, because they learn from their mistakes and then they push themselves even harder than they would, before. And this isn't always the norm, but a lot of times attorneys will struggle tremendously after this happens. And so another thing to understand also is that if you are working in a large law firm, you're often going to be front loading your compensation earlier in your career. So what happens is you make a lot of money very, very early in your career. You stay in the large law firm as long as you can. Then at some point, if you get senior and you don't have business, you're not going to make partner. But you have to take a job usually that doesn't pay as much. Often it'll pay half as much. So you're front loading your compensation often earlier in your career, with the idea that you're probably not going to make as much ever, at least as an associate or a counsel, than you would in the large law firm. So your goal is really to do whatever you can to keep a positive trajectory going, regardless of the type of firm you're at, to constantly, trying to move to better firms. So learning when you might lose your job and then trying to move up if that's possible, and never avoid being asked to leave. And most attorneys, when they're about ready to lose their job, don't really understand all the warning signs. And so today I'm going to try to make you aware of the conditions, mistakes, and type of signals that will increase your chances of losing position. And it can be, again, like I said, it could be your fault or due to different circumstances. And a lot of attorneys, are always to know that they can constantly, or they're under threat of potentially losing position. So, you need to understand the rules of the game and act in a way to avoid them. So here are 32 reasons that attorneys lose jobs inside of law firms. So the first one is your hours are too low. So this is the most common reason that attorneys are let go. Law firms can compare you to other associates in your firm, or maybe they just don't have enough work. But if you have low billable hours, you should always assume your job's at risk. Attorneys with low billable hours are consistently the most vulnerable to termination. Now, why are hours important? Hours are important because if you're in a law firm and you're getting work, that means you're doing a good job. So attorneys that are able to generate work from partners or from clients, if they're a partner, show that they're actually doing good work and people are giving them repeat work and they're able to get enough work. So that shows the caliber of attorney that you are and how well you're doing by getting more work. And if a law firm is comparing you to other people and you have low billable hours, you should always assume your job's at risk. This billable hour, having the most billable hours, that applies to partners and it also applies to associates. So if you don't have enough hours, your job's at risk. And it's just very important. So this is the reason that most people lose their jobs. It's often the reason that people don't become partner compared to other people. And here's why hours kind of matter so much. If you don't have high enough hours, it means that other people aren't giving you work, or you're not seeking out work aggressively enough. And if others aren't giving you work, the presumption is that your work isn't good. They don't want to give work to people who aren't doing good work, or you might be difficult to work with. You don't make the partners you're working with feel good. You don't give them the kind of work that they want. And so the best indicator that law firms have of your performance is basically how many hours you're getting. And the best attorneys are the ones that are easiest to work with, that are able to work hard for people, that give them the kind of work that they want. It's the same thing with partners. Partners will get good hours if they're able to bring in business and get work and get additional work from their clients, and the clients allow them to bill a lot of hours. And that's just kind of how it works. And so law firms with hours also, it may reflect the health of your practice area. So you may have low hours even though it's not your fault. So law firms have different kind of silos that make up their business. Law firms have different groups of partners that may have business or may not have business. So there's all sorts of silos inside a law firm. So most organized law firms will have a real estate practice, they'll have a litigation practice, they'll have a corporate practice, they'll have a patent practice, they'll have a tax practice. And each of these is a mini business. So real estate could be active, and then if interest rates get really high, it may slow down. In litigation, law firms may have big cases that could settle and then put your job at risk. Patent, all these different tax, corporate can be a very, very dangerous practice area because it's also determined based on the economy. So excuse me, each silo and each practice area you're in is a mini business. And so if that business isn't going well, your hours may be slow. And so your job will be at risk regardless of your performance. So if you're at a firm and there's not enough work in your practice area and there's work in other practice areas, then you're probably better off moving firms. Sometimes large markets and large firms are slow, but mid-market firms have business. So you always want to be in a position where you have work. And this is like the number one rule for attorneys to understand. Like the most important component of your job is always having work to do. So that's your lifeline. Partners need work. If partners don't have work, then they don't have there's no reason for most law firms to keep them around. If associates don't have work, it's the same thing. So you always need to be in a position where you have work. And the other thing that a lot of people don't understand is you need to create work. So creating work means seeking work out, but it also means finding extra things to do and getting extra hours if you can do other things for people. And it's about creating work. So people, a lot of times, they will go into law firms and they'll go in with this kind of working class attitude that I'll give you, I'll do what you give me to do, but they won't understand that they need to really seek out work and do as much work as possible and get repeat work. And it's extremely important. It's important for partners. It's important for clients. And if you learn one thing in this presentation, and one thing in your career, It's to always have access to work. If you lose access to work, then you die. So that's really the most important thing. Hours will often just reflect the overall health of your law firm. Sometimes the law firms won't have enough work. Law firms are businesses and they reduce headcount to maintain profits. I had the most crazy thing happen, again, it was this week. I had a woman that was in a southern state, and she got hired by a firm in California. The firm in California hired her because they believed that they were going to settle a big case and then be able to take on all these other cases after they settled. So the woman picked up her life, even though she had a house and everything in the South. She moved to California. She got there, and within a week or so of getting there, the firm didn't settle the case. And all of a sudden, the law firm couldn't afford her because they didn't have enough work. So she lost her job. So that was a very dangerous situation for her to walk into. She didn't understand what was going on, but all of a sudden, they didn't have the ability to give her work and pay for her. Hours are often, like I said, a measure of how hard you're willing to work. So you're expected not just to do work, but to create work. So many times you do one assignment and then you come back and say, hey, we could also do something related to this. Or if you're a litigator, why don't we file this motion? Why don't we do extra discovery? If you're a corporate attorney, why don't we try to do another transaction or similar transaction or whatever, or do something for our clients that's going to help them? So you always need to try to make work. The best attorneys will make work. And one of the things that's interesting about a lot of large law firms. So I was working with a partner recently that had $30 million in business, and he moved from kind of a middle market firm to a very prestigious New York firm in Los Angeles. And he got there, and when his clients all of a sudden were being billed like 2 times what they were before, because the law firm took the work that he didn't do it all himself, and it was given to other partners and things. And those partners figured out how to just completely like bill like tons and tons of hours and for these transactions he was working on that were ended up costing the clients twice as much, because that was kind of how that law firm worked. And the law firm has some of the highest profits per partner of any firm in the country, but that's what they do. They create work. They do extra work. They do all these different things that a middle market firm wouldn't do. So they made work. It wasn't good for him, but if you're able to make work, your hours and job security, if you don't know how to do that, will be low. And that's what the best firms do. The best firms have the largest clients and they create a lot of work for them. So if you're a litigator in a major firm, instead of just responding to motions and things, they will have associates write these long memos about different issues. They will really work the matters a lot to generate work. And that's what firms do. That's the business. The business is basically how much work can you create, how much can you bill, how many hours can you get. And the largest firms have the highest hour requirements. They expect you to create work and do a lot of work. And you need to pay your way inside of every law firm. So how do law firms kind of evaluate when they're hiring associates and partners? Well, typically the way to think about it is 1/3 of your billed revenue is your compensation. So if you're billing $1 million a year, you should be making somewhere in the neighborhood of 250 or to $350,000. That's just kind of how it works. The other third of the money that you generate, if you generate $1 million in revenue based on your billable hours, the other third will typically go to the firm overhead, which is the offices, staff, support, all that sort of thing. And then the other third will go to partner profit. So that's how you need to think about your compensation. So if you're only generating $500,000 a year and your compensation is $250,000 a year, then the law firm is going to look at you and they're going to think this person is not paying their way. So think in terms of the revenue that you're generating for the firm, how you're paid. And if that falls below the 1/3, then that's a problem and your job could be at risk. So you should write this down, because this rule applies to associates, it applies to partners. It's just kind of how the market works. Because if your compensation is like half of what the firm's collecting, then you're probably in trouble. You're not profitable at the level they expect you to. So your hours are always going to be compared to others in the firm. And if you're at the lower end of the hours, then you're in danger compared to other associates. An associate that's managing to get 2,500 hours of work a year and another that's only getting 1,500, the one that's getting 2,500 is obviously much more profitable and looked at much more favorably than the one that's not. So, some law firms, if a lot of people might be billing 2,500 hours a year. It's not unheard of. And if you're at 1,900, they can replace you with someone that's hungrier, that's willing to work those hours. So someone that's willing to work harder is much more valuable to the firm than someone that's not. Firms for senior attorneys and things will often raise billing rates. So it's very common for partners. Like a partner might start out billing $1,000 an hour like 10 years ago. And after 10 years, the billing rate of the partner, they may just keep raising it, and it might be 1,600 or 1,700. And then the partner needs to figure out how to get clients that are going to pay that, or hold on to existing clients. And so all these sorts of things can affect your hours, and hours are just the best measure of your performance. And if you don't have high hours, it's the primary reason that partners and associates lose their jobs. It's the only thing, it's the most important thing that's going on in the background that you need to realize. And if you don't have high hours, you're always going to be at risk, because you're going to be compared to others that do have high hours. Or if the law firm doesn't have enough work, then you're not profitable either. So law firms will let go huge amounts of associates sometimes. So sometimes they will hire a class of first-year associates, and then all of a sudden the corporate market will tank, and there's no reason to keep 20 new associates on the payroll, because that's just wasting money. So they know they can always bring in people later and hire laterally, so they'll let you go. And there's always, an institutional memory of people that have built a lot of hours. So, but not that strong. So I was talking to a woman not too long ago. She'd gone over to a very strong litigation practice from Jones Day in New York. And so all these attorneys also move with her, because they're like, wow, we're going to get all this experience. We're going to get to work on this big matter. There was a big matter they were working on. And so all these associates from Jones Day ended up billing like 2,500 hours a year for 2 or 3 years. Then all of a sudden, this big case they were working on went away, and they all lost their jobs. They were just told to, pound pavement. And so even though they billed all these hours in the past, they weren't protected because the business slows down. So what do you do as an associate if you think you could wind up in that situation? You try to diversify and not just work on this big case, but see if you can get other people to give you work, so your hours never, so you're not just sitting there. There's deal flow, there's cases settling, there's practice areas where the work can dry up. Sometimes law firms will even get rid of practice areas. Like they'll have like employment defense and get rid of it, or they'll have patent and get rid of it. And the big one is during recessions, corporate work will often halt. And patent litigation used to be a very active market before the rules came down about fighting against, or not allowing patent trolls. And so all these things can happen that can affect your hours. And some practice areas are very, very risky. If the law firm doesn't have a lot of ongoing work from institutional clients, that can affect you. So you always have to understand that you have to learn how to take action if there's not enough work in your firm or your practice area. If there's not enough work in your practice area or in the city that you're in, you can often move cities, or you can move to smaller firms. There's all sorts of things you can do to have work continue to flow in, but it's just very, very, it's very, very dangerous. If you build a lot of hours in the past, the law firm has already paid their partners, so it's just for that work. And so there's no need to keep you on. So you have to always be in a position where you're billing as many hours as possible. And the more you're able to bill, the more work you're able to get, the more you have advanced potential and the ability to hold on to your job. So please remember this. It's extremely important. If you're unable to get hours or unable to get work in your firm, or if there's not enough work, you have to look for a job, because your job is at risk. People are not going to let you sit around with low hours, because it doesn't benefit them. It's just not good. And it shows that you may not be good at going and getting work from other people. You haven't diversified the number of partners you're getting work from, all sorts of things that can really hurt you. The other thing with just partners, this is a simple thing, or people that aren't making partner, you have to learn how to develop business. It's a hard thing to say, because a lot of times people will get in firms and they'll think it's impossible to generate business. But if you don't have business, you're completely at the mercy of law firms, and you will be throughout your entire career. You have to rely on other people in the firm to give you work. Law firms, basically, when you people don't think about this, but a law firm exists to service partners with business. It doesn't. So when you're an associate, the law firm is essentially hiring you to work for partners. And but if a partner doesn't have enough business, then they're not, the partners are essentially hiring the law firm. The law firm is a way to support their book of business. And that's why they exist. They don't exist necessarily to give work to partners. They exist to support partners. So you want to get to in your career to a place where you're not dependent on the firm, or where the firm is dependent on you. Firms are dependent on partners with partners with business. That's just how they work. The law firm cannot function if it doesn't have partners with business. So if you don't have business, you're never gonna, you're always going to be working for someone else. You're never going to have a law firm working for you. If you have enough business, there's tons of firms that will hire you. It's really not that hard. But if you don't, it's a problem. So you need to learn how to transition from doing work for others to generating work on your own. Now, sometimes you can be in a firm and you can be very, very close to a partner with a huge amount of business, and you can advance if you get very close to them. But that gives you also a lack of stability, because what happens with that person? So many people will jump between states and things if they don't have business, and they'll be looking for all these different places. And so, that will hire them without business. So you need to be in a position in your career where you're developing business. And if you develop business, you have long-term stability. You have your own business, essentially. You have your own clients, and law firms will work for you, and you won't always be dependent on finding people to develop business for you. As an associate, you need to start learning and making contacts and things that will help you get business. You just need to do it, and you need to develop a good reputation in the legal community. I know one guy that was a partner at a major law firm, and then he basically, when he was 45, he made enough money that he felt like he could retire, and so he did. But then he lost a lot of his money from that he'd had, and so now he's needing to work again. And he had a good reputation, so he's getting work actually of people that the firm couldn't represent, that were kind of conflicted out or different matters. And so he was in a position where, because of his reputation, he was able to get business. And I spend every day, not every day, but most days, speaking with very senior attorneys that don't have business. And that happens all the time. You could be a partner at a big firm and then lose clients, or you could just never have been in a position where you're able to generate business, and it just puts you at the mercy of someone else. And it's not something that you need to you can do for your whole career. You need to always have work, and if you don't have work, that means you don't have enough business. And sometimes attorneys will even move from doing things like commercial litigation in large law firms to doing family law or something, because they know they can always generate business doing that. Everyone is trying to keep busy. Everyone's trying to have work. So there's all sorts of reasons people may not have work. So sometimes you may find a mentor, and they're giving you work constantly, and they can give you work. They can even make you partner. But often, if you're working and dependent on getting work for one person, that senior attorney may leave or be forced out. And no matter how loyal you are, they may you may lose work. So I see that all the time. A partner may leave with a lot of business, but then they'll leave that person there, and then that person won't have enough work. And then they'll be in a position where other people aren't giving them work. And so then they'll be pushed out. I speak to people in this situation all the time. Often, sometimes you'll be working for a senior attorney that's giving you work, and that person will leave, they'll get sick and so forth. And, and then you'll lose work as well. And so this can be, a bad thing. And then, it's just not good. Sometimes the people that you're working with may run out of work themselves. So if you have, different relationships in your practice areas, sometimes those people will run out of work and assignments. And because of that, you'll be in a bad position. So you always want to put yourself in a firm where there's a lot of work, and where there's constantly work, and where the firm needs you. Because if you do that, you're going to be in a position where you're going to have more security. And you want to, you always want to be in a firm where there's enough work, where there's consistently enough work. Because if you're not, you wind up in this situation like the woman I told you from a southern state who moved to the Bay Area, and the firm didn't have enough work and they lost work. And again, the longer you wait to get business, the greater your eventual pain will be. And large attorneys in large law firms in major cities will get comfortable making high salaries for a decade or more. Their income will rise. Their families will adjust to this lifestyle. They'll purchase nice homes. They'll go on nice vacations. They'll adopt these, spending habits. And when they get senior, they'll all this will eventually end. They may spend months or a long time looking for a position. Many times when this happens, I just want to kind of put this out there because it's painful, but people will work in a large law firm for maybe 8, 10, 12 years, and then they'll lose their job, and all of a sudden their spouse is like, what's going on? And they often get divorced. It's very, very common, and I see this all the time. I had one guy that's very interesting. He was from Australia, but had experience in, I think, project finance. And I got him. He was unemployed in Australia, or actually, no, he was working for a decent sized firm in Australia doing project finance. And he'd worked in New York before. And for whatever reason, his wife couldn't live in Australia. She needed to stay in New York. She was an American. And so he, worked for months to get a position at a firm in New York, and he got one. He was like a 10th or 11th year attorney. And then after 2 or 3 years, he got too senior, so they let him go. And then I ended up getting him another job, and the same thing happened. He lost his job like after a year or so. So people that are senior like that, it's very difficult to hold on to your job. And then he moved back to Australia. And then about a year ago, he called me for this career counseling session, and he was just devastated. He was living in Australia, and he didn't have a job, and he couldn't get back to New York. And so he was senior and was kind of in this position. If he had business, none of this would have happened. And so, most people, you need to realize, regardless of the firm you're working for, they're out for themselves, including the people giving business to you. So if a partner that's giving business to you, if their work's slowing down, they're going to do it themselves because they need hours and not necessarily give it to you. So, you need to understand that anytime you're working for someone else, anytime you're dependent on getting work for other people, it can be, very, very dangerous. And there are very few law firms where you can survive the long term if you don't have enough business. It's just very, very difficult. You will maybe get some jobs when you're senior, but then your odds of keeping them are, very, very slim. And law firms prefer younger attorneys, and that are willing to work hard as opposed to senior attorneys that have high billing rates, and they're just more difficult for people to keep them around. So there are some attorneys which you can be a service partner or a counsel attorney or contract partner, but even these attorneys are often the first to go when things slow down. And the large law firms, as you kind of understand the rules, are much more dangerous than smaller ones because larger law firms typically aren't going to teach you how to develop business. They want you to bill as many hours as possible. They want you to focus on that, and then they'll keep you around as long as they can. Smaller and mid-sized firms may actually teach you how to generate business, and it's much easier oftentimes with those firms because their billing rates aren't as high. So just remember that the model of large law firms typically is much more dangerous than smaller ones. Smaller law firms, your compensation will be lower, the ability to generate business will be better. It's often much easier at smaller to mid-sized firms. And just I really want you to understand that the only way to have employment stability for the most part is to create it on your own. So unless you're able to develop business, you're almost never going to have employment stability. It's very, very dangerous. So you need to get clients. I mean, you always need to have work. This is really the only employment stability that you can have as you get more senior. You need to generate business. Now you ask yourself, how do you generate business? Well, I have lots of articles on BCG that talk about it and guides and things, but generating business is just something that you figure out. You figure out how to meet a significant other. You figure out how to do whatever to buy a car you like. Everybody figures things out, and if they want to do it, they figure it out. But you need to figure things out. The other thing that happens that I hate to say, and it's not very nice, and it's controversial, but it's true. If you're the least qualified attorney at your firm, meaning you may not have gone to the best law school, you may have not the best credentials. When law firms are deciding who to let go, these are often what I see the first people to go. It's actually very sad, but law firms prefer to keep people with, if you're working in a major firm or a firm where there's a lot of very highly qualified people, and I don't like discussing it, but often the first people to go are going to be the people that don't have the best qualifications. So if a law firm has people from Harvard and University of Michigan and so forth, and then maybe you went to University of San Diego Law School. If the law firm's work slows down, you're often going to be one of the first to go. Why is that? It looks better having people with good schools and so forth on the law firm's website. The presumption is that, it's just that's how it works, and so it's unfortunate. So why does that happen? So when partners are staffing cases and matters, they'll often say, these are the people I'm putting on the matter to the client, and the people, if they look very good on paper, then that's something that the clients like and the partner likes. So clients are going to be less impressed by seeing people from lower ranked schools when they're paying major rates, unless you did exceptionally well at a lower ranked school. So law firms, just so you understand, are basically selling the quality of their people. They're selling who's going to be working on different matters. And so partners will often hire, assign, and fire based on perceived qualifications. I had one guy, it was interesting. He was dyslexic, and he went to a law school in California that wasn't even ranked, meaning not ranked. It was, I don't even know if it was ABA approved. He graduated from the school, and then he was very, very hungry. He wanted to work in the best firms. And so over the period of like 3 or 4 years, he went and got 3 different LLMs or 4 different LLMs, with a final one being from Harvard. And he managed to get a job in the Los Angeles office of a New York law firm with this Harvard LLM on his resume. Then he got into this firm, and they saw that he'd gone to this unaccredited law school. He'd been hired. So I don't know how he'd gotten hired, but he'd gotten hired by this firm, and no one would give him work. They just refused to give him work. And I think maybe because they didn't like that law school. I mean, that was the only reason I could think of. And just the LLM didn't really give him much credibility. So the law firm people didn't give him work. And so, it's harder many times if you don't have the best qualifications. If you get into a decent firm, but you don't have the best qualifications, partners may often not give you work. You'll struggle to get assignments. They will think that maybe you're not as smart as other people. They won't like showing your credentials to clients. It can be harder to get work. So, oftentimes you can get into top firms even without top academic credentials. I couldn't believe it. There was a huge boom in corporate attorneys in 99 to the late 2000s. It all stopped in about November of 2000. I was working there, and I saw the most incredible stuff. I saw people that were at like in the middle of their class from Pace Law School getting jobs at like Sherman and Sterling and some of these incredible firms. But then they were the first to go when things slowed down. They just literally just very, very quickly lost their jobs, when people from, better firms did not lose their jobs as quickly. So they were literally the first to go. Sometimes, what happens is you may be the last person hired. So if there's a class of like, 7 or 8 third-year associates, and you're the last hired and you weren't a summer associate there, for example, you're often going to be the first to go. So that people that have been at a firm as summer associates and have been there a long time compared to laterals are often the people that are kept. So if you're a summer associate at a firm and then you're working at a firm, you're often going to have a lot more employment security than someone that wasn't. Other times, if you're a lateral attorney and you've only been at the firm a year and another attorney has been there for 3 years or 5 years, it's going to be harder for you to keep your job than the person that's been there for a longer time. So it's often very dangerous to lateral, because if work slows down, then they're often going to keep the people that have been there the longest time. So just these kind of rules about being careful about lateraling are important. So it's something to understand. One of the biggest reasons that people will lose their jobs, and this happens all the time, is just pissing one person off. So people will often undermine a superior at a firm, and there's very subtle ways that can happen, but people do it in all sorts of different ways. I worked for a partner once that was very, very talented, but he could not write, and he just couldn't do it. And he was a litigator, so he would always hire very talented writers, myself included, to work on matters for him. And when this guy that was working for him before me was a graduate of Columbia Law School and had been this guy's like right-hand man, and then had started talking to other people about like that this guy couldn't write, like how was he so successful, and he was a very successful partner. He actually never lost a case in like the 25 years that or 30 years he'd been a partner in this law firm. But he talked about this guy to other people. It got back to him, and they just stopped giving him work completely. And he didn't lose his job. I don't know why they didn't fire him, but when I got there, there was a way to look up people's hours. Like you could see all the different associates and things, and how many hours on the time system. Might have been an old one. And he'd literally been sitting there for like 6 months and had maybe 5 hours. He undermined this guy, and they just froze him out of work. And it was very sad. I mean, the guy practically went crazy. But they didn't fire him. They just didn't give him any work, which is even worse. So he just sat there in his office with, the door closed, and, it wasn't a good thing. So he undermined someone. Most partners in law firms, they want to feel secure. They want to feel like they're not being undermined by others. They want to be respected. And it's the same thing, with that you would want with a client. If a partner undermines a client, or a partner says something bad about the client behind their back, or the partner doesn't make the client feel good about themselves, then that person will lose a client. So anytime you threaten someone's sense of security, anytime you threaten someone that has, could have low self-esteem, or you say something that undermines them, your job could be very, very much at risk. So you need to respect the people you're working for. Even if you don't, you need to make people feel good about themselves. And this is the same thing you do with a client. And anytime you don't do that, even if you disagree with someone, even if you don't like the way someone's doing something, you just can't do that, because these are clients and they will fire you if you are not nice to them. So you need to make people feel good about themselves. I mean, there's certain people that are just, there's in every partner, there's partners that are just completely like socially, that don't have any social skills. Might have business, but they don't have very good social skills, and they're nerds, or you just look at them and you think, what is this person doing? And if you telegraph them to any way, then they will get rid of you. My dad was in the CIA, and one of his first, when he was young, he was spying on someone. They put him in a Swiss college, and his job was to basically to network with Chinese people that were communists, that I don't know, that from China, that were I don't know exactly what it was, but his job was to make friends with one of these people in particular. And so he went in to meet the person that was kind of giving him instructions. And this was very early in his career. And he started talking about like the reason he didn't like this guy, like all these things that he didn't like about him. And the guy stopped him and he said, the most important lesson I can give you about being good at your job in the CIA is, if you think something negative about someone, you'll show it. Even if you don't say it, they will pick it up. And so you never want to think negatively about people, because if you think negatively about people, then those people are going to pick it up, and you're not going to be good at your job. And he said that was like the most powerful lesson that he ever learned. So when you're working for someone, you should not be thinking negative things about them. You should not be telegraphing that you have negative opinions about them, because they will pick it up, and you need to be very, very careful about that. I hear people all the time that call me and have all these like criticisms and things of their law firm and the people that they're working for. And if you're doing that, you're going to be at a very serious risk. I see people raising their hand on the webinar, and I can see it, but I will, as at the end of the presentation, I will answer questions about this. But this particular, so you can, if you have questions, just save them for the end of the webinar, I'll answer them. But this particular thing, like, you have to like the people you're working for. Even if you don't, you have to telegraph that. And people just don't like that. And every law firm, also, there are people that are soldiers and people that are generals. And so anytime you're getting work for other people, like people are giving you work to do, you're a soldier. And what that means is your job is to do what people give you to do, and just carry it out and not complain. If you're in a war and there's 100 people or 1,000 people that are expected to rush the enemy with guns and things, you don't sit around and say this is a bad decision stuff. You go into the war, and even if you're going to get killed, you follow the directions. And so a soldier's there to carry out orders. And anytime you start acting like a general and criticizing the people that are giving you orders and things, you're not a good soldier. So if you're getting work for other people, you are a soldier. And it's important to understand that. If you're a partner getting work for other people, you're a soldier. If you're regardless. If you're a partner getting work for other partners, you're a soldier. So other, a lot of generals, if you criticize them or critique them, they won't like that because they'll think this is not a good person to carry out my job of billing hours and making it easy for me. And sometimes thin-skinned people, if they just pick up one little criticism, then they're gonna feel threatened and they'll fire you. Even very powerful generals, if you're undermining them, they don't have any use for people like that. Would you? Like if you had a nanny that you were hiring to work in your house and your job was to give that nanny instructions and for them to do things the way you wanted to, if you wanted them to feed your child 3 times a day, and they said, I don't believe in it. The child needs a period of fasting. What are you doing? Like they should only eat dinner. You would think this is insane and you would get rid of them. And that's the same thing that partners are like. If you criticize them, if they feel threatened, if they feel undermined, if you don't say positive things about them to their clients and stuff, they will get rid of you. I mean, your job as a soldier is to do whatever they want and to represent them and to make them look good to others, even if they're not. You have to make sure you're doing that. And anytime you undermine someone personally, professionally, or whatever, you're undermining their financial security. You're not making them feel good about themselves. And so they're going to instinctively lash out to protect themselves. People want to feel good about themselves. People want to feel that people are doing a good job for them. People want to feel that they can give you work to do and you're not going to question them. And so anytime you make someone feel insecure, you question them, you don't do what they want you to do, they're going to push you out like a virus. And this is what law firms do. Anytime you undermine an individual, they will be mad and they won't give you work anymore, or they'll fire you. Anytime you undermine the firm as a whole, like firms are basically, what's interesting about them is they're like a body. Like, so if a virus comes into a body, like you kill it. You take medication, you do whatever you can, or your whole immune system comes and fights it and gets rid of it if they can. And that's the same thing the law firms do. If you're a negative person and you're a virus, and they will push you out. If you associate with other negative people, like you're a group of like 3 or 4 people that are against the firm and talking badly about it and stuff, the law firm will know who those people are and they will get rid of you. So you can't, anytime someone is giving you a job and giving you work, that's a gift. Anytime someone is giving you hours, that's a gift. The last thing in the world you ever want to do is make people not like you and not support people. People want to be around people that support them. You do too. If you have a lot of marriages, and one time a spouse will turn very negative on someone and start making them feel badly about themselves, and this is why divorces happen. So I mean, a lot of them. So you have to have people's back. People need to feel like you have their back. They need to feel like if a partner's giving you work and other people are criticizing them, and you need to stick up for them. If this is what you do. You need to get support. I see people fired all the time when they don't support the people that they're working for, when they make other people feel badly. So here's some of the things I've seen. Sometimes I've seen a lot of people, very talented attorneys, lose their jobs. They question the necessity of assignment, whether or not it's necessary or not. They tell people, "Oh, why are we billing hours to this client for this?" And they lose their job. If a law firm has a client that's willing to pay them, and they're asking you to do a certain type of work, the last thing you should ever do is get in the way of the work being done. You need to get the work done. Partners are financially rewarded when you do work. So if you spend 20,000 hours a time or $50,000 a time, whatever it is, your $20,000 may earn that partner $5,000. If you challenge the necessity of it, you're threatening their livelihood. I saw one guy, it was very sad, and I've told this story before. He went to University of Chicago Law School, was at the very top of his class, got a job in Washington, D.C. with Washington, D.C. office of a major New York law firm. There was a young partner that asked him to go and work like a month on this assignment. He came back to the guy like half a day later and said, "This isn't necessary. This is what the result is and what you need to do." And the partner said, was upset. And then he started telling other associates and things this guy was trying to rip off a client, and they fired him. And they fired him 6 months into his legal career. And it was very sad. I got him. How did I get him? I got him one really good job at a firm. It was very, very difficult because he was sitting there unemployed. And then he got into this firm, and the firm said that, they made him an offer, and they said, when you do conflicts, they did the conflict check, and he didn't get the job. And he was so upset, dropped out of the practice, working in law firms, didn't let me help him anymore. Told me even his father committed suicide, and he was worried because he was so upset he was going to do the same thing. And he became a drunk driving attorney for the next 10 years. I saw him later in Washington, D.C., all because he undermined one person. All this stuff happened. Then he felt so badly about himself, he gave up trying to get a job in another large law firm, which he could have done had he looked outside of Washington, D.C., and looked at more places. I was the only recruiter that he contacted that we even helped him. And I did get him a job offer and a couple of good interviews, but he didn't get the job. So anytime you undermine people, you complain about them, you gossip about unnecessary work, or you undermine people, you say negative things about people, and it gets back to them, you're dead. So you should never get involved in negative conversations about people that you're working with. You should never share negative opinions about people you're working with, the other associates. Sometimes you'll share opinions with an associate, and you'll think that person understands you and they're your friend, and they'll go and they'll tell that partner, or they'll tell. Sometimes people talk negatively about the people they're working with to their secretary, and the secretary will tell another secretary, and the secretary will tell the partner. I mean, people get burned from this stuff all the time. Your job is not to question people. Your job is to put your head down and support whatever they want. And it goes to, if you're a partner or you're an associate, it's just the way it is. Sometimes they'll want you to build a lot of hours to something. They'll just say, keep working on this, keep working on it. And when there's work to be done, it benefits both the law firm and the attorneys. If you're constantly looking to be ultra efficient and cut corners, you may be hurting the firm more than you help it. So I was working for a partner once, actually this guy that never lost a case. And we were doing this stupid case. It was the Hotel Bel Air was being sued because they had a little box of cigars. And if people asked for a cigar, they would open up and sell them one. And it didn't have what's called a Proposition 65 warning on it, which means that this could cause cancer if you smoke the cigar. And then the hotel was sued for this. And it could have been settled for like $10,000 and gone away very easily. But we were representing the Sultan of Brunei, who owned the Hotel Bel Air. And the Sultan of Brunei would pay whatever was necessary to fight a case. And so this guy gave me so much work. I worked for weeks writing memo after memo, looking at the legislative history of this particular bill that came out, this Proposition 65, questioning whether or not the person that was suing was really doing in the public interest because they were just trying to, all these different things, looking at tax laws, like just working for weeks, billing all these hours. And this is what the guy wanted done. This is what his client was willing to pay for. And we actually got an incredible result from all this, and better than any other law firm did. But at the same time, that's what he wanted. And he wanted me to do that. I didn't question it. Had I questioned all this work, he would have stopped giving me work because he wanted someone that would bill a lot of hours to it. That was what the client was willing to pay for. And so it's not, if you work a lot of hours on something, which you should, it's not your decision of whether or not the client's being billed too much. It's what the law firm wants. And people are often fired and penalized for being too efficient, especially when the foundation of the firm is based on billing a lot of hours. I went out on a date recently with a woman that was very interesting. She was like, I don't know, 15 years out of law school, and she's still an associate, but she had moved. She'd always had a lot of employment security. She'd actually been at Gibson Dunn, which was kind of amazing because she hadn't gone to the best law school and well there. But, she told me that her key to surviving was she just, worked as many hours as she could on each matter she got. And people kept giving her repeat work, and people that didn't do that never stuck around. So she got employment security by billing a lot of hours and doing what people wanted. Sometimes people will do things like they'll take credit for work that a superior may want work for. So the egos of a lot of senior attorneys depend. They want credit for insights. They want to be the ones that got the best, did something in a transaction, even if you're the one that did it. And I saw that a lot when I was practicing. I came up with like different novel legal theories that I thought were very helpful. And then I would see like a mass email go out from this partner about how they solved this by coming up with this incredible insight, and they would take credit for it, not me. and they would act like they were the ones that did it. And so it was very interesting. I started building a book of business when I was a third year associate. I had what would be about $500,000 in business right now when I was third year associate. And in order to get that work, in order to bill to the client, I had to basically there was a partner that I was assigned to that was basically supervising the work that I got. And so I would go to him with the client. He would say, okay, yeah, you can work on it. Let me oversee it if I need to. And so I started seeing that I brought in, like, I don't know, like 3 clients over the course of a month. And then there was a mass email that went out to all the partners and associates in the firm saying that this guy is incredible. He's brought in three good clients in the past month. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm the one that did that. But he never said anything to me, that he just took credit for it. So it's never wise to take credit for something. If someone else wants credit, let them do it. Don't get all fired up about it. People want to take credit. If your superior wants to do that, they know you're the one that came up with things, but let them take credit. That's their deal. You can't. You just have to allow other people to take credit. I was interviewing a woman not too long ago, and she was basically, she had like 4 or 5 jobs and said, "Oh, I'm smarter than everyone there. Like, I keep getting in fights because, like, I'm doing like a better job than they." I mean, all this sort of stuff. So, but you just can't undermine anybody. You can't undermine the law firm if it gets back to them. Sometimes people will undermine an entire law firm over something. There was a big law firm in New York, and that law firm, there was someone who'd posted something negative about the firm, a negative opinion about the firm on Above the Law on the comment section or something. The law firm, from whatever they said, the law firm knew that it was coming from an associate and the New York office. And the law firm went and they basically, because I could see the time that Above the Law showed the time that the posting was made, and they were able to go into all the computers and figure out like who was on Above the Law at that particular time, and they fired the person. And just amazing, because it got back to them. I once saw, when I was a young attorney, there was a associate that got a call from a reporter and spoke to the reporter about a case, and the client saw it and complained to the firm. And this person lost their job after 6 months at the firm when I was there. Sometimes people will just talk outside of the firm, and that can destroy trust. And so, that's not good. And, if you talk behind a superior's back and it gets back to them, you're burned. And, so you don't share your opinions. Even subtle comments to people that you think are not a threat can be very, very serious. I was in a federal clerkship, and I became friends with a court reporter, and the court reporter had very negative opinions about the judge I was working for. And so I shared some of my opinions with her. She shared them with people in the clerk's office. Then that opinion in the clerk's office got back to the secretary of my judge, and the secretary told the judge, and the judge turned incredibly hostile. And I was in the process of getting fired, losing my job from working for him, and I quit because I kind of realized where the conversation was going, but I got fired. So I shared negative opinions about something, I got involved in something, and it created a toxic atmosphere. He went and made it like he was firing me for making a typo in a like 20-page memo I wrote that I didn't even need to write. I just was passionate about this one legal issue, and he got mad and used that as an excuse. So, he would never bring up that he was firing me because of that, but that was why he didn't feel supported. And you need to support the people you work with. So people can accuse superiors of overbilling. People can request judgment. People can talk about things that someone did wrong. Sometimes people can speculate about someone's personal life. Someone may drink too much. Someone may cheat on their spouse. You don't know. I was once working with an attorney that was sleeping with an associate that I was also staffed on a case with, and they were taking these trips to visit clients about stupid things. One time we were there late at night, and I also worked late. They thought I was gone. And so I walked into the firm at, like, I don't know, 1:30 in the morning or something to pick something up. And they thought I had left around 1. And I saw the girl walking into this partner's office, and the door closed and the light went off. And I was like, wow, like, this going on. Well, the partner, whatever reason, it got back to him that I know that he knew that I saw that. And he became very hostile towards me. So you should never criticize or anything about your superiors. If you do, they're going to be used as a threat. they're going to want to remove you. And that's just, you have to be very, very careful. You can't undermine anyone. You wouldn't do that to a client. You wouldn't say bad things about a client behind your back. I once, a partner in a firm I was working with, talked very, very negatively about this client. And that's just not something partners typically do with their own clients. Their job is to defend them. And it's almost, if a lawyer is not defending their client, doing the best they can with their client, or making them look bad in front of a jury or whatever, that's a very bad thing. It's just not acceptable in the legal profession. And when that guy did that, I was like, this guy, wow, he probably did, this is not good. And sure enough, he lost clients, or I don't know what happened, but he ended up having to open a solo practice, even though he was working as a major New York law firm. Sometimes people will act out against management. So they may get mad for management for lots of reasons. They might be upset about not getting a promotion. They may be upset about having to work too many hours. They may get upset about low bonuses, compensation issues, or feeling unsupported. I had one partner that I was working with. He was at a very prestigious law firm in San Francisco, and he had 3 or 4 associates working for him, and he gave them all bonuses. And one of them was extremely upset, and he felt very angry about that. He was like, "I'm going to get rid of her because I felt that it was a good bonus." I mean, I was actually coaching. He was one of my coaching clients, and that was very, very upsetting to him. That one person being upset about their bonus. So people that are dissatisfied often will that's people don't like that. People want to have people around them they feel like they're team players that are supporting management. And if they don't, that's a problem. I mean, you have HR in firms, and you have different people you can complain to, but if you're considered like someone that's a problem and not supporting the firm will basically want to protect itself, and you may be pushed out. You may not know why, but often it's just because you aren't supporting the management. And management wants people that are supporting, they're easy to work with. And if you have issues with the firm, you should probably just look for another firm. You shouldn't make the management of the firm feel you're unhappy, because that's just not a good idea. I was at a summer associate event of the New York law firm that I was working at, and there was an associate there that was head of the pro bono committee, and there were different partners sitting in this pro bono presentation. And he talked about how the firm had the lowest hours and wasn't a good pro bono firm, had lowest hours in New York. And then I saw him, he was like an office next to me. And for the first 5 or 6 weeks of the summer prior to that, people were pleasantly coming to his office and giving him work and stuff. And then I just saw him getting like dressed down, like people just, complaining about his work and making problems for him. And, by the end of the firm, he was gone by the end of the summer. And I watched him over the course of like 6 or 7 weeks practically have a mental breakdown, but the law firm, didn't like him. So if you're too senior, that's a problem too. You can lose your job. If you have 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 years of experience in no business, it's very, very dangerous. Your billing rate will become much higher. And as your billing rate becomes higher, you're competitive with partners for the same amount of work. So if a partner is billing out at, I don't know, $1,200 an hour and your billing rate's 1,000, the client's going to prefer to have the partner working on the matters, and the partner will make more money. So if the partner does their own work, they may get 40% of their billables if they're billing to their own client. If they go to someone else, they may get 15%. So it becomes, much higher, much harder to get work as you get more senior. So that's one reason people lose jobs. It's very simple economics. And then some firms often have mandatory retirement ages. I mean, which is not something to matter too much, but typically if you get senior and you're a partner, you don't have enough business, you can lose your job. A lot of people will have very large egos, and this is something that's a problem. So if you're really so concerned about yourself, it's a problem. So a lot of times young attorneys that haven't practiced very long will have big egos. They will come in, they'll be all idealistic. They'll have gone to top law schools and things, and they'll expect things to be done a certain way. Sometimes people will move from a large law firm to a smaller one, and they'll have a big ego and think that they know everything. A lot of times, it's very common that when top law schools will get into firms and think that the firm must value them based on their schools and things, and maybe even talk down to partners and then to go to the best schools. That can harm people. Sometimes they'll move from major markets to smaller markets. And then when they get into the smaller markets, they'll think they're better. Sometimes people will believe that they're smarter than everyone around them. Excuse me, no one likes that. So having, anytime you think you're better than other people, anytime you think you know things better than other people, then people will push you out. And so, they will do that to show that you're not above others. So most of the time when you're working for partners, like if your ego is very big and you think you know everything, they'll just dress you down and basically, they'll push your ego down. And so you just don't want to upset others around you. If you do, they will humble you. It's just how it works. So anytime you have a big ego, anytime you think you're better than people, anytime you think you're smarter than people, they will find reasons to dress you down. They will not like it. And so a lot of people lose their jobs due to that sort of behavior. So it's just important to understand that the people that are giving you work need to be respected. You cannot think you're better than people. You can't think you're better than other associates. You can't think you're better than other partners. You can't think you're just better. And if you do, then you're going to lose your job. Sometimes people will talk about that they'd rather be doing other things. So they'll say, I want to go in house, or they'll say they need to be challenged and advanced or recognized. And that's the only reason. And if they're not challenged, advanced, or recognizing, they're not going to stay. Sometimes they'd say, they'd rather have their own business and things. And so if you telegraph to anybody, including associates at your firm, that there's something you'd rather be doing, that's not good. If you even question the wisdom of being an attorney, express doubt over practicing law altogether, that's not good. If you're in a firm and you basically say you don't like your practice area, you'd rather work at a smaller firm, that's not good. Because when superiors hear this, they'll assume that you're not committed, and they'll bring in people that are, or they'll give work to people that are. So these sorts of any type of disengagement that you have, or anytime you telegraph that, or anytime you act like there's something you'd rather be doing, why would a firm give you work? Why would a firm advance you? Why would a firm not, not lay you off if there's something you'd rather be doing? So anytime you have anything that connotes a lack of commitment to that firm, no one's going to want to mentor you, because that's a waste of their time. So you have to be very, very careful. People are not going to invest in people that aren't committed. You need to come across that you're extremely committed, not just to that law firm, but to practicing law and to practicing in that practice setting. So no law firm has any incentive to be loyal to you if you don't look committed. It's very interesting. Attorneys will go in house, and once you go in house and you want to go back to a law firm, it's extremely difficult. I mean, I've done it, and I've done it with people. Like, I placed one person recently that got a job paying $350,000 a year, and he'd been in house. He lost his job in house, and he'd been unemployed for 2 years. I got him a good job, but at the same time, most law firms are not willing to look at people that don't want to be there. You wouldn't either. So if that person and someone went in house at one time, so that doesn't look like they're committed to law firms, that maybe they want to be in another practice setting. So any type of lack of commitment is dangerous. Now, you may not be committed. But you need to keep that to yourself, because you need to get mentoring. You want people to support you. You need to get work. You need to keep your job. And the other thing I would say to you too, that when you're in your first 5 years of practice, especially, it takes about 5 years to learn any practice area to be a good attorney. So that 5 years that you're spending, is training. You get that training that will last your entire career. You can, if you want to go in house that a lot, you can take that in house, whatever. But you need to look like you're committed, and you need to be committed your first 5 years, because you are learning something, and being taught is an incredible benefit to anybody. Like learning a practice area, because those skills you learn and the training you receive, if you work in a law firm for 5 years and you stop working in a law firm by the time you're 30, or you work there till you're 30, you have all these skills you can use, start your own practice, to go to a smaller firm, a larger firm, whatever. But you need to show a commitment, and you need to show commitment to your law firm. You need to figure out like reasons that you like that law firm and look committed. Maybe you like the fact that they work on a variety of practices. Maybe you like the fact that you like the people you're working with. You need to look committed, because if you're not committed, then the law firm has no incentive to train you and to give you work and so forth. So you need to look committed. It's very, very important. It's one of the most important things that law firms look at when they're hiring laterally. They want to hire someone that looks like they're going to go there and be committed and have reasons for wanting to be at that particular firm. The next things that can get people fired a lot of times is their activities outside of work. So sometimes they mistakenly believe that they can bring that stuff in, and it is okay sometimes to personalize yourself, but If they don't like your behavior outside of work, it can negatively affect you with a firm. You're expected to be outside of work to look like a professional, because you're a representative of the firm when you're outside of work. I saw one woman, it's a very sad. She was a trademark attorney working at a firm in Silicon Valley, working for one partner, doing trademark work. And this partner used to come in and talk to her about dating, about being on dating sites, about problems she was having with men and so forth. And then one weekend, the associate working with her had met some guy at Club Med like a year previously or something, and then had brought the guy out, flown out to San Francisco where she was living, and they had sex the entire weekend. And then she went to work on Monday and told this partner about it. And the partner was just appalled. Like, you didn't even know this person prior to this very well. You just met the person casually. And the woman actually ended up firing her. And the woman that got fired said, yeah, my everything just went south after I told her about that. So she brought in her personal life into work and offended someone. So, people lose their jobs for their activities outside of work all the time. People don't get hired because of things. There was one woman that was seventh or eighth year lateral that was moving with her firm. The firm, all the partners at her firm were in her practice area, moving to another firm. And 3 or 4 years previously, she posted on Facebook that she hated practicing law, but she was just in it for the money, something like that. And the firm she was moving over to didn't saw that and were like, we're not hiring her. And then the partners had moved, and so the firm she was at, there was no work until she lost her job and was unemployed, all because of this. And I don't even know that she got another one. Sometimes people could be accused of domestic violence and divorce proceedings. I mean, sometimes I saw one guy arrested because it came out that he'd hired a prostitute when they were on a business trip with the firm. He'd got in a fight with a prostitute, hadn't paid her, and she was banging on a door trying to get paid. And then there was a partner in the room next to him, came out. It was just, people can get fired for all sorts of things, being charged with any type of crime, a blog where they share too many details about their personal life. Anything that raises any questions about your character can result in a law firm letting you go. And that it can just offend people. It's just negative things about yourself. Anytime you have a problem, by the way, or there's something wrong, and you talk to people in your firm, whether it's an associate or a partner or whoever, even a secretary, you talk about your personal life, you should assume that whatever you say will be weaponized against you. If you say you have a drinking problem, you're going to AA, that will be weaponized against you. If you say that I cheated on my spouse, that will be weaponized against you. Anything that you do will be used against you. Associates will use it against you. If you're another associate, they will use it against you. Anything you say negatively about yourself, you need to realize will be weaponized against you. So you cannot bring in negative information about yourself into the firm. And if you do, anything you say will be weaponized against you. Talk about you're going to AA, then they'll be like, oh, this person's an alcoholic, and they will follow you. If you talk about my spouse got a restrainer, I mean, whatever you say is going to be used against you. So you need to be very, very careful. Some firms everyone may be wild and having fun. And other firms are going to be strictly conservative. And so you need to find law firms that are, match your culture, but you also need to be careful that, you don't want to fear losing your job. I mean, you could lose your job if you share negative activities about yourself outside of work. Now, you wouldn't do that with clients. So you wouldn't tell a client negative things about yourself. You'd want that client to think highly of you, and you'd present yourself professionally. And you do the same thing in a law firm. It's very important. Sometimes people will lose jobs just because they want too much money. People often believe they should be earning more. If they're at a smaller firm that doesn't pay as much money, as a larger firm, then they think they deserve more money. People will often graduate from law school and not get a high paying firm job, or sometimes they'll move to another market and not work as much, or sometimes they won't get a job that matches the salary increase that they got by the competitors. Sometimes they'll be upset about their bonuses. Sometimes, a lot of times, partners will be very upset about their compensation and create problems. Sometimes staff attorney will resent pay gaps. And I've seen this incredibly, like a lot of times I've seen people compete about, be very upset about their compensation. They lose their jobs, and people see it as a threat. Sometimes the law firm just won't have enough revenue coming in. If you're unhappy then they don't want you to be unhappy. So, and sometimes people will demand more money than other people are making. It can create a source of tension. And, I had one example. This is someone that I hired. I had an attorney working for me that he was very smart. He went to Berkeley. He couldn't get a job. He graduated from law school when he was very young, like 19, is extremely smart, and couldn't get a job because I think he was too young and he just didn't have any experience. And so I hired him, and I hired him paying maybe 70,000 or 80,000 a year, which is a fair pay, fair amount for a new attorney working for my company. And he was very, very upset with his compensation. There was a big salary increase of the firms all over the state, and he wanted to make as much as all these people were making inside of law firms, even though I wasn't a law firm. And then he went and he complained to our human resources person, and he complained to me. He was very upset, and he's like, I'm only going to work, like, if you want to keep paying me this, I'll continue working here, but I'm not going to kill myself working past 5 and stuff. It's very upsetting. So I gave him a raise to the same amount that large law firms were paying. But when my business slowed down, I knew he was going to be unhappy if he didn't get salary increases and so forth. And so I let him go. I was unhappy. There was a lot of tension. I didn't think he deserved to have a salary double. I did, but it was a stupid mistake that I made, but I wasn't happy. So when my revenue slowed down, I found problems with whatever he was doing. I wouldn't have done that had he not demanded as much money, and he ended up losing his job. So, if you are dissatisfied with the compensation of your firm, if you are complaining, then that's going to threaten, and you're undermining the firm, and then they're not going to like that. They're going to want to hire people that they can afford. And so law firms will push people out that they think are unhappy with their compensation, demanding too much money. So if you're in the position, look for another job. Don't say anything about it and make people around you unhappy. If you're unhappy with your bonus, don't make that an issue. Just take whatever. I'm sorry to say it, but it's very, very difficult for people to stick around at firms if you're demanding too much compensation. I brought this up earlier, but people often question the quality of someone that they're working for, their intellect, and so forth. You may be much smarter than people you're working for, but really succeeding in the largest law firms, are people that don't criticize or gossip about other people, like I told earlier. So if they think you're questioning them, if you think you're undermining them, then they won't like that, and they'll protect themselves by eliminating you. I was One time, a partner I was working for asked me to write a summary of a deposition that he'd done. So he'd done this deposition. It was maybe 200 pages, and he wanted me to write some summaries. And in the summary that I wrote something. He'd done something kind of stupid in the deposition. He'd asked the same question 3 different ways, and each time someone had objected, and he hadn't phrased the question in a way that was not objectionable. And so I talked about that in the deposition summary, that he kept saying, and he got very, very mad at me and came and pointed this out to me, and stopped giving me work. So I was able to get work from other parties. He was kind of upset by that. So you can't question your superior's abilities. You can't act like you're smarter than them, because if you do, they're not going to like you. In your role, you wouldn't do that to a client. You wouldn't tell a client they're stupid. Your role is to support and assist them, and make them feel good about themselves and not tear them down. When a law firm is working for a company, like the person, sometimes the company will have in-house counsel. I mean, a lot of times. And so the law firm will always, I saw this when I had a in-house counsel in my firm for a very long time, like several attorneys. And when we were having work done by outside law firms, the outside law firms would always say, like, this person is just so smart. They really found something that I didn't see. That what a great in-house attorney you have. And they would tell the in-house attorney how great they were. And they did that because that's what lawyers do with clients. They make them feel good about themselves. Even if the ideas were stupid that one of my in-house counsel would come up with, they would still try to make them feel good. So this is what you do with clients. Like, you make clients feel good about themselves, even if they're stupid. I mean, it's just, or not, this is what you do, and you have to do it. Sometimes people would just make stupid mistakes at office parties, retreats, and other things. Very common for people to drink too much. Sometimes I saw one partner that had a big law firm in New York. He was working for the Los Angeles office. The New York office, a big Los Angeles law firm. He drank too much at a party, and when he was getting into a car, with a driver, he fell down, and I mean, they didn't like that. Sometimes people will get, too drunk, they'll make inappropriate remarks. Sometimes people will come across as too flirty with someone of the opposite sex. Sometimes people will make fun of a superior at a party. Sometimes, people will have too much public displays of affection. And so all these things can call your judgment into question, jeopardize your career. I've seen so many careers that, just derailed completely by that. I saw an attorney at a firm retreat where everybody had been drinking for a long time, and he was sitting next to a woman who was general counsel of a big company, and they were kind of having fun, talking back and forth. And he made a comment about the general counsel's breast, and the management learned about that. And even though this guy was a really good attorney and gone to Harvard Law School and was doing good work, he was immediately terminated. I talked about earlier the partner at a major firm getting drunk at a Christmas party. I saw a party at one time. Attorney at a party mocked a local judge's competence in front of people that knew the judge, and the firm fired the attorney. I saw an attorney, they performed a little talent show, and it was making fun of a group of people that weren't kind of white, and he was let go. So law firms are very sensitive, and what you say and you do socially can really end up oftentimes doing a lot of damage to your career. So you need to be aware of how others see things. You need to maintain professionalism at all times. Sometimes a law firm will be under new management after a merger. So if you're at a law firm and it merges, they often will eliminate a lot of attorneys. So you need to be careful. Mergers are business combinations, and when that happens, a lot of times they're trying to reduce. They believe that they can reduce inefficiencies, and that will often, you can often lose your job. So partners without business are often eliminated during mergers. Associates from the previous firm, are often kept, the one merging firm, are often kept, and then people from that aren't there often lose their job. Partners without business and senior associates, counsels, associate of lowest hours. So unprofitable practice areas are often cut when there's a merger. So I talked about labor and employment, patent prosecution, trust in the state. Some of those can be eliminated. Offices are eliminated often that aren't seen as profitable or necessary. And there's often, when there's a merger, there's often a dominant firm and a not dominant firm. So the dominant firm will often, keep it people and eliminate a lot of people from that. So I'm not going to spend too much time on that, but this is something just to be aware of. Sometimes people lose their job by taking an extended leave. So they'll take a leave of absence for different things. Sometimes it'll be for childbirth, health reasons, or other personal matters. But these leaves should not be too long, because the longer you leave, now childbirth is one thing. Law firms are actually very open to women doing that, but a lot of times it can hurt you. I've seen a lot of men, several men, like it's very common. Men will think it's okay to take a paternity leave, and most partners and law firms would never think of taking a paternity leave. So sure, they'll have that as a process, as something you can do. But men that take these paternity leaves will come back from the paternity leaves, and people won't give them work anymore. They don't respect them. So it's just, that's something that happens. And so, law firms will often not like these extended leaves. It just, can hurt you. And, it's just when you take a leave, you're suddenly out of the workflow of the firm. All the relationships and things you may have developed and things you were working on, you lose. So, there's an unspoken rule in the legal profession, and something that a lot of people don't realize, and it's actually very, very important. You should never, if you're working in a law firm, once you start practicing, you could start at the age of 25, like I said earlier, but you're never expected, you're expected to never leave the practice of law for very long at all, because the longer you leave, the more difficult, you're out of sight of politics and everything. And so you just need to be, very, very careful about taking leaves. Even periods of unemployment are not good. This one's pretty obvious. I'm going to spend a lot of time on it, but people get accused of sexual harassment all the time, and people lose, or things related to that. This is a huge issue. It's something I've seen so many times, and I've seen so many careers ended. I saw a junior partner make remarks about his secretary's appearance. She complained and heard about it. He got fired. I saw a senior patent associate at a firm ask out some female associates. He lost his job. I saw a council level attorney who was dating an associate. They broke up. She filed a restraining order. He lost his job. I had one career that I saw end that was very, very sad. I was working with a partner he was in Chicago from a big firm, and he had a relationship like 5 years previously with a paralegal, and it ended amicably. There were no issues with it. But she told her boyfriend about it, or I don't know, maybe it was her ex-boyfriend found out about it and called the law firm and told them about it. And he actually ended up losing his job because he had $10 million in business. He lost his job because he had been dating someone that was a subordinate. Even though they worked on separate floors, they weren't in the same practice areas. That came up and he ended up losing his job. Very, very serious. I have a guy that, and this is very sad too. He actually, I know him very well. He was a famous producer, and he was filming a movie. And this is not really the legal profession, but it just shows you how this DEI or management works. He was working. He had a very famous actor he was representing, and they were filming a movie in Australia, and he was, on the set, and there was a nurse that he knew on the set. She was working as a contract nurse. I guess they have nurses and things when they have these big sets. And he was friendly with her while they were working together. And then she stopped working on this movie for whatever reason. She's a contractor and someone else came in. And then so when she left, he asked her out and then started texting her, and the texts were friendly. They weren't anything sexual in nature. But then she came back as a contractor to the movie. And when she came back, she told other people that they've been dating and so forth, casually. I don't know, they just went out for like a short dinner or something, nothing serious. And he ended up getting fired from the set, saying you can't work on here anymore. And then his client is a famous actor. He'd taken this guy from nothing to be like a very powerful, very famous actor. He fired him, and then when he fired him, all of his other clients fired him. And so he literally, his career ended because of this. I mean, it's absolutely insane. The guy's like in his mid 50s. It was all over the news. And just because of this, his career ended. So you just need to be very, very careful about this stuff. I had one of my best friends who was working for the NFL. He had this position where he was being paid $500,000 a year, and he was working with another woman that had the same similar job as him, also making $500,000 a year. And they were up late working on some matter. I don't remember exactly what it was, till like 1 in the morning. And then they both went home, and then they went into a meeting at like 8 o'clock in the morning. And after not getting a lot of sleep, and he put his hands on her shoulders and just kind of grabbed them like that and said, "Are you okay?" And she said yes. And someone saw that, and they fired him for sexually harassing one of his peers. And then not only that, but they did like a press release saying that they fired him for sexual harassment and they had no tolerance of this in the NFL. And so his career was over. Now he's trying to make a podcast or something and get paid for those. So it just shows like this stuff can really very quickly destroy careers. You need to be careful. Sometimes people have substance abuse problems. A lot of attorneys do have substance abuse problems. If it interferes with your work or the firm, they will let you go. If they won't say that's the reason. I know one guy that's a partner. He's been in like 10 different firms, and he goes to these firms and they figure out he's an alcoholic and ends up losing his job. So people that will have issues with this. I'm not saying this is that important, but it is something that I've seen a lot that destroys careers. So if you have a substance abuse problem, you really need to work on it and fix it. And substance abuse is just, it's not looked on in most firms in a positive way. Sometimes people will refuse to do certain types of assignment or uncooperative. People may ask them to do work that's beneath them, or people may ask them to do or that they think is beneath them, or people may ask them to do only the type of work that they personally prefer. And I've seen so many careers end because of that. So it's more common among younger attorneys, but it's often even senior attorneys. And you're supposed to do what's needed, not just what you like. And if you don't do what you want, then you can get in a lot of trouble. So sometimes attorneys will, want to do certain types of work. They want to work for smaller clients, or they'll want. I saw one guy that was at a big firm. He's hired a firm in the Bay Area, and he said he wanted to do white collar litigation. And they said, yes, we'll give you what we have. And so he went to work there, and they started asking him to do commercial litigation because they have enough white collar litigation. He refused to do it, saying, I'm only here to do white collar litigation. He lost his job and is now and ended up becoming a contractor for me because he didn't find another job. He didn't have to. I've seen people, I saw one guy that was a senior associate that was it was in a merger, and when the merger happened, all the people at his level, the people that made partner the next year, were people that had come over with the firm that kind of had all the power after the merger. He didn't make partner, and then a partner that had not made him partner came and gave him like this stupid assignment to do. And the day after he found him to make partner, he said, I'm not feeling really good right now. I know you're kind of messing with me. Can you give this to someone else to do? And the guy had been at the firm for like 12 years, and the partner that he didn't do the work for, didn't say he didn't want to do it, showed up at his door and said, you have two options. One is to sign this severance agreement and take this check. The other's to just get fired right now. It's up to you. And so that happened. I mean, people do this stuff. I mean, literally lost his job because he refused to do an assignment, or just, and so it can really hurt you. And I see this all the time. I see people complaining about the work that they're doing, or being unhappy about it. And your job is to be a soldier. You have to do what's asked. And if you don't, or you have resistance to it, or you say this work's stupid, it's beneath me, people just won't like it and it'll hurt you. Sometimes people lie in their resume. I don't know why people do that, but if it happens, you'll lose your job. I've seen that happen several times a year. Some dates of employment, lying about like, boards in law school, class ranks, all this sort of stuff can hurt you. So you need to make sure your resume is always honest. And I saw one woman who's very interesting. Was working in a major firm in San Francisco, and I placed her there, and she'd gone to Fordham for law school. And then for whatever reason, I mean, she's absolutely crazy. She had a job at a big firm. She resubmitted a resume to BCG and put down that she went to Columbia and not Fordham. I was like, this is amazing. And I couldn't believe it. But people lie in their resume all the time. Sometimes people's collections will be low. I don't want to talk too much about this, but meaning partner might bill 100 hours and only collect 50 of them. So that can hurt them. It's not, too much of a big thing. Sometimes people are caught lying. I've seen a lot of people lose their jobs for that. Once the firm believes they can't trust you, then they will often fire you. I saw an attorney, was fired for $100 discrepancy on a expense report. He blamed keystroker. He lost his job. I saw another guy lose his job for complaining the assignment was complete when it wasn't. This is actually a very sad story. He was at a major Los Angeles office of a Chicago firm. He was literally going to be up for partner in about a month, and they were going to make him partner. And then they asked him, he came in like on a Wednesday or something, and they asked him, did you send a letter that you were supposed to last night? And he said yes. And then he sent it, an hour or two later, even though he hadn't sent it. And then the partner was able to went in to look at a draft of it and saw that it wasn't completed until the morning, so it wasn't sent, and he got fired for that. Just very crazy. This guy had done everything right, but he lied. So if you get caught, you can be in a lot of trouble. Sometimes law firms are just slowing down on their work. So if a law firm is slowing down on their work, we'll often let people go, often very, very quickly. So I've talked about this earlier, but if the law firm is losing work and it's slow, law firms are businesses, so they will try to save money by letting you go. And so you always need to be in a place, if you can, where there's a lot of work. When work slows down too, what'll happen is the law firm will often become hypercritical. You'll start getting really bad reviews, even though if there was a lot of work, you wouldn't get bad reviews. And so people are told that it's their fault when they lose jobs. And law firms will, instead of citing economic or workload things, they may point to an error you made, a bad attitude, they'll say, or poor fit. Sometimes, you'll get vague complaints from partners, and sometimes firms will, shift the blame to the attorney to avoid, making anything. So they don't have to look like they're having problems with business, and so they'll figure out and they'll make you the problem, not the other way around. So if a law firm's slowing down your work, it's always important, if you can, to try to find a place where there is work, because you'll start often getting bad reviews and being let go if the work's slowing down. Being sued for malpractice, I'm not going to get too far into that. People do get sued for malpractice. If that happens, that can obviously be something that's problematical. People that aren't easy to work with, I've talked about that earlier. If you're not easy to work with, then people will work with people that are. So sometimes people are negative, sometimes people are difficult to work with, sometimes people won't do assignments on time, sometimes people will find reasons not to do things, sometimes people will just not be easy to work with. Sometimes you may ask endless questions about things, come back to the partner needing guidance continually, and just making things difficult instead of figuring out how to get things done. So people don't like, people give you an assignment, they typically want it done. They don't want a lot of questions. I was working as a summer associate in a law firm, and I was asked to do some sort of very sophisticated, difficult securities filing with a just for someone in that a company in Nevis or something. I just no idea what the hell was going on. And I went to the partner to ask him a question about it because I literally didn't. This was just completely insane what I was doing. I had no idea. This New York office of a big New York law firm, and the guy, when I asked him a question, he said, I don't have time for this bullshit. And he got all pissed off. He's like, I'm going to take a walk in the park. And he's like, just because of that question, he got very mad. So you have to be easy to work with. You have to figure things out. Sometimes people will refuse to work with people. That can be a problem. You have to be able to be easy to work with. You have to be able to solve problems. You have to not be able to burden people with unnecessary questions. You just have to be easy. People have to give you work and not think about it. And then you come with a result. If you bother people too much, you're difficult to work with. People aren't going to like you. So it means your assignments come back complete. People don't need revise things. Things are good when you give them to them, and that's you need to do. You need to anticipate what people need. You need to make other people's job easy. So people need to fix or redo your work. If they need to talk to you too much about it, they're going to give work to people that don't do that instead of you, and so you need to be aware of that. Sometimes people will be unwilling to go the extra mile. So law firms people are expected to go the extra mile. If you're expected to stay up late or work hard in assignments, that's much more value than people that aren't. If you start thinking that you're not giving everything you got to the firm and its clients, when other people are, you're more likely to lose your job. It means you need to work all night if it's necessary. You need to meet deadlines without excuses. If you're given work to do and you have a lot of other things you're supposed to do as well, you have to do them all. You have to finish assignments. You may be asked to interrupt vacations and call them vacation. You may be texted late at night. You're still expected to go the extra mile. And when you do turn in work, it needs to be as close to perfection as possible. There's no excuses because you had too much to do. So you need to be able to basically go the extra mile. That's the job of an attorney. If an attorney is going to trial, they have to be prepared. It doesn't matter that you have to do what the best you possibly can. And honestly, like the difference between being like okay and very good at your job may just be an extra 3% effort. And the people that put in that extra effort to do the best work they can are often going to be the ones that succeed. If you don't put in an extra effort, you have issues with your time, or you are unavailable, or you're not doing the best work, then people are going to give work to other people. And that's just how it is. So, the idea with practicing law is it's no different than practicing medicine. If someone comes in and they're very injured and you have to do all this work to save their life, your time really doesn't matter. I mean, it's the client that needs to come first. I talked a little bit about the attitude. I mean, I'm not going to spend too much time on this. We're going to work through these fairly quickly because I know there's a lot. We're taking a lot of time, but I want to make sure everyone gets all this stuff. People want to work with people that are positive, cooperative, not those that are negative, resist, or carry negativity. You would be the same way if you were hiring someone. So if your attitude slips, that negativity, if you're a negative person, then that again is like a cancer. And so the law firm will push you out. So you need to look enthusiastic. So when you get work to do, you need to act like you're excited to do it. You would do the same thing with clients. And so you're going to be protected if if you're positive. So you need to always be communicating positivity. You need to have a good attitude. You need to act like you're grateful for the work, you appreciate the assignment, all these sorts of things. You're committed, have a really good attitude. And if you don't have a good attitude, which a lot of people don't, then they're not going to like it. I see this with senior attorneys, all these people all the time. I talk to them and they just have all these negative opinions about the places that they worked and a bad attitude. And they have little criticisms of the last place they worked. And they say they quit or whatever because of it. And then they come into interviews with a bad attitude. And a lot of times senior attorneys will be very negative. Maybe they haven't made partner, or maybe who knows. And then they'll interview people and you can tell they have a bad attitude, and that'll be difficult. Sometimes people just don't like your work, so you have to be able to turn in the best work you can. Sometimes writing is sloppy. Excuse me. You may make careless mistakes, all these sorts of things. I had a guy that he'd failed a Delaware bar twice and had lost his job at a big firm there. He couldn't get a job, and I eventually got him a job working for a solo practitioner who'd worked at a major law firm. I think Hogan and Hartson as a partner. And I ended up getting this guy a job there. I sold him, he learned from his mistakes. He was going to be hungry. He's going to do the best he could. And he got there and was turning in very sloppy work. And so that guy fired him too. And now who knows what's going to happen to that guy's career. But you need to do the best work you possibly can. You need to fix your work. You can run it through ChatGPT, all these sorts of things, making sure you're getting every detail, that you're turning in things without typos. So if you don't turn in the best work, you're going to be in trouble. So people lose their jobs for poor quality work more often than they realize. I mean, you need to, every assignment you get, you need to treat it like it's the most important thing in the world. And I had one guy that was crazy. He was a diversity candidate and he was working in this firm and he lost his job because he wasn't doing good quality work. And then I couldn't believe it. I asked him, what are you going to do at your next firm? And he said, well, I'm going to start having my secretary proofread my work so I do better work and I don't make as many errors. And I was like, that's absolutely insane. He was using a secretary. So, your work needs to be very, very high quality and it needs to be the best. And if it's not, you can get into trouble and you need to do whatever you can to turn in good work. For junior associates, I often recommend talking to mid-level associates or senior associates about your work, trying to get a lot of feedback before you turn anything in, because if you don't turn in perfect work, you're going to be in trouble. Sometimes you might just be in the wrong culture, and that's very common. So you can lose jobs just because you're in a firm that doesn't match your culture. And every firm has its own personality, and different people fit in. And if you're in the wrong culture, you can still, you can lose your job, even if it has nothing to do with you. Firms will rarely say you're not a fit. They'll often make it about your hours, performance, but you might just be in a place where you're uncomfortable with the people. And so you need to find a culture where you naturally belong, or try not to force yourself in one that doesn't suit you. I've been single for, I don't know, several months, and I've started dating people. What I've noticed is I'll go on some dates and I'll walk away and I'll just feel great. I'll be like listening to music on the way home and I'll just feel really good about the person I met. And sometimes I'll go on dates and I'll just be like, just to be a horrible like match, and I'll just be like very unhappy and I'll go back and I just won't feel good about myself. And so that's similar to cultures. You can get into a law firm with a good culture and you're just happy with the people and you like them and you feel good. Or you can get to other cultures where it's the exact opposite, where it just doesn't match. You don't feel good around the people and they're not the kind of people you'd like to associate with. And so these cultures, it's not just about your race or your religion or your background. I mean, there's all sorts of different firms. I was working with a guy that was a former professional football player, and he worked at a firm that had other people in it that were college athletes and everything. It was a bunch of athletes. And other firms, like if you work, sometimes you work in small firms in like South Carolina, and everyone will have gone to the same high school, and someone comes in, in some practice area from New York or whatever, and just never fits in. Other firms are composed of people of one political party. It's just very strange. I've seen this law firm I worked in. It was the Los Angeles office of a New York law firm. I figured out like very quickly that all the partners there were Catholic. I mean, it's just crazy. So people will often be around people that are like them, and you need to find your own tribe with people that are like you, that you get along with. In high school, I mean, there's people that are good athletes, there's people that are really good students, there's people that smoke pot all the time, and there's different groups. And so you need to thrive when you're around people that you like. And I can't really, you don't go to a firm about money. You don't often, if you go to a firm where you're comfortable around the people, those people will support you and get behind you. And if you make errors, you're part of their tribe, and it's not taken as seriously as if you don't. You need to fit in with the people you're with. And so people will often take the first job they get. People will really not think about this a lot, but I was working with a woman just yesterday and she has two offers and she was basically wants to negotiate about a $10,000 difference between the two offers. And I was asking her, I was like, well, what firm makes you the most comfortable? Like, where do you feel like you could do the best? The one that's offering you $10,000 more or the one that's offering you $10,000 less? And she said, well, my whole goal is to make money. Like, and I was like, this is absolutely insane. Like, if she gets into a firm where the people are more like her and she's more comfortable, she's going to do a lot better than if she's at a firm where it's the opposite. So you need to be around people that are like you. And culture, I can't even begin to tell you how important it is. You need to be in the right culture. Sometimes you get on the wrong side of office politics. You don't want to get involved in politics. Politics could be about all sorts of things. And when there's politics, there's internal power struggles, people take sides on things. And when that happens, you can get in trouble that have nothing to do with your performance. You can lose your job. I've seen partners lose their jobs, like I told you earlier, about being on the wrong side of something. And it's just unpredictable, but you really don't want to get involved in office politics. I remember I interviewed with this firm when I was a young associate. I was only like 6 months. I'd only been practicing law for 6 months. And my friend told me, oh, you should come interview with my firm. It's everyone gets to do, there's a lot of entertainment people. You get to drive around in convertibles and meet with celebrities and everything. I was like, that's really cool. So I decided to I talked to him. Little did I know that he would get a bonus if I got a job there. But anyway, I went and interviewed with this firm and I interviewed with this guy that was just awful. Like he was not nice to me at all. And so I walked out of the interview. I didn't even complete the interviews. And then the guy called me like 6 months later and he was like, oh, you should come back and interview here. I'm like, I had a horrible time. Why? And he said, well, that guy's out now. He was basically the head of the firm and now they're pushing him out. So I'm sure you can get a job here. I was like, this is crazy. Like there was one guy that was kind of controlling the firm, and then now he wasn't, and this stuff just happens. Branch offices are also very dangerous. There's only a couple more of these, and then I'll be done to take questions. But if you go to a branch office of a firm, they can be very, very difficult. So law firms will open offices all the time, and then the partners in that firm are isolated from, the main office. They won't give them as much work. You're not part of the main politics, and so a lot of main decisions are made in the main office. It's often much easier to make partner if you're in the main office and you have relationships. And so law firms, when they cut people, will often cut people from the branch office because they don't have relationships. The relationships aren't as strong instead of the main office. And so oftentimes branch offices are staffed with laterals. They're much easier targets during slowdowns. And so people will often leave branch offices, like a lot of partners sometimes, if they don't like it. It's very common for a law firm to open a branch office, hire a lot of lateral partners that were not getting along with the previous law firm. And then those partners will do the same thing when they come to the lateral office, and then they will move. And that means all sorts of problems can happen in branch offices. So if you're in a branch office, it can feel, you're removed, you're one step, you're not close to the power center, and you can often be let go. It's very dangerous. Sometimes you just make a bad mistake. So you could miss an issue in a case. You could forget to file something. You could show up late to a closing. I saw one guy that was a first-year associate. He'd been working like till 2 or 3 in the morning for a week and getting a couple hours of sleep. And then there was a signing of these documents. He'd been up till 3 in the morning. The signing was like at 9. And for whatever reason, he slept in and missed it. He lost his job. He'd been working, a son looked like sleep in a similar situation. So making one bad mistake can hurt you. I saw one woman lose a job because she forgot to file what's called a verification when she turned in some discovery. She was like an 8th year at a major firm that was where she was going to be up for partner. And then she ended up losing her job because she forgot to file this thing, even though she would have been part of just one little document. Sometimes you're in a practice area that's no longer profitable. So that's important. And I talked earlier about corporate, different types of practice areas that can be where bad things can happen during slowdowns and things. So that can, if your practice area slows down, it's no longer profitable, that can hurt you. A lot of firms, they hired lots of patent prosecutors years ago, and because I wanted to develop these IP practices. Patent prosecution, you can't bill by the hour, it's often by the project. They saw they couldn't make money from it, so they started getting rid of all their patent prosecutors. When work slows down in corporate and M&A, people lose their jobs. Law firms will settle cases. When they had a lot of litigation work, people lose their job. So I've talked a lot about that, but you have to be, if you don't have, if your practice area is not profitable or active at the firm, you can lose your job. I was working at a firm once that started out, they had a lot of employment discrimination defenses or employment defense cases. They couldn't bill as much money. The hours weren't, that you couldn't bill as much. The fees were lower. The law firm decided they no longer needed these 15 people that were doing that because it wasn't as profitable, and let them go. There's just all sorts of practice areas that can be dangerous, but sometimes practice areas are good. A lot of times in litigation, work will pick up when the economy is bad because everyone's suing because they lost money. High interest rate environments, real estate can slow. Labor and employment, like I talked about earlier. So, just kind of in summary, there's a lot of reasons that people lose their jobs. I hope what I've talked to you about today kind of gives you ammunition to understand, when this kind of stuff is happening. Law firms can be very unpredictable. It can be very difficult to lose your job and you don't know why. Again, I talked earlier about culture. I saw one woman that was working in a law firm and she just kind of had this personality that was kind of uptight and things. And one day someone just walked into her office. She'd been at the firm a year and said, "We don't think this is a good fit," just because she wasn't socializing with people. She was just crazy. So, all this stuff can offer you a lot of lessons. But, my main point is that you need to understand when you're in a position where you could where you might lose your job. And if you are losing your job, what is the solution? Or when you need to get out there, you need to do like a very, very aggressive job search. I recommend that everyone, you should always be on sites like, Indeed, on LinkedIn. Law Crossing, my site is very good because it finds jobs that are not advertised from law firm websites. And so you can give you a very good understanding of the market. You always need to understand like what do I need to do if things change? And you should always have an understanding of the market. You should be looking at job sites like at least once a week, even every couple of days, because you want to understand what the opportunities are out there, what you're going to need to do if things get bad, and you're going to need to you need to understand the market, and you need to know, what do I do if I make these mistakes? Because, and then when you do search for a job, if you need to get one quickly, you need to do a very, very aggressive job search. You need not just look at openings, but you need to apply to firms that don't have openings, and you also need to probably apply to other markets too if things slow down. Just one quick point, and then I know that I've been talking for a long time, but I think this is very important. During the recessions or when you may lose work, it's much easier often to find jobs in smaller markets than as larger markets because there's not a lot of people applying there. But your goal always is to have access to work. If you don't have access to work, you're in trouble. You need to make sure that your work is continually going, whether you're an associate or a partner, because if you don't have work, it's a problem. So access to work means behaving the right way, getting environments where there's a lot of work, being happy about the work you're getting, be easy to work with, getting more work from people, and all this sorts of stuff. Okay, so that's the presentation. I apologize it was so long, but I do think this stuff is extremely important. What we'll do now is we'll take a break for just a minute or two. When we come back, I'll answer questions. I encourage everyone to stay for the questions. I think the questions are often the most important part of the presentation. The questions are good because people, what you learned today, not ever, people will have insights and questions that you may not have had answered during the webinar, so that will help you. You'll probably hear from a lot of people that lost their jobs and want to know what to do or what they did wrong, that things that I may not have talked about. So all these questions can be very, very helpful. And I would encourage you to ask as many questions as you have, because I will stay as long as people have questions and I'll answer them all. You don't have to ask questions about this webinar. You can actually ask questions if you want, which I encourage you to do, about anything related to your career and decisions you'd like to make or questions you have. I've been doing nothing but this constantly for over 25 years. So I've seen a lot of people do the right thing and I've seen a lot of people do the wrong thing. And I've helped to rescue a lot of careers where people may have had, trouble for whatever reason. And most people, by the way, run into trouble. Trouble could be just being in the wrong firm right now. Trouble could be losing your job. Trouble could be not having business. I mean, all sorts of troubles can happen. So any trouble that you can think of or question, I encourage you to ask. All the questions, by the way, are also anonymous. So sometimes people logged into Zoom are worried that I'll show your name. I'll never show your name. And hopefully it can help. So we'll take a quick break. And then when I come back, I'll do as many questions as everyone has. So we'll be back in a second. All right, questions. Let's get to questions. Give me 1 second. And questions are one of my favorite times of the week because I love, I love hearing questions. So I think that I just love hearing what people concerned about and thinking about. And many times I think that when I do answer questions, if you ask the right question, it could really, help you kind of change the direction of your career. So please ask questions. And even if you think they're stupid questions, they're probably not. They can help other people. Let's see here. And the other thing that's nice about questions is I save the questions. And so when you do ask a question, I'll typically do a little write-up about it and that sort of thing. So it'll be something that not just helps you, but a lot of people in the future. And every week when I ask questions, we get, thousands of people like reading the questions and answers and when they come back to the site and so forth, and they can help you. Let me just get this done right here. All right, questions. Okay, first question. How can I tell if I'm being quietly pushed out of my law firm before it's too late? Okay, so it's a great question. So you'll typically be quietly pushed out of your law firm. One of the ways to understand that is if you're not being given work. So that's really the one of the most important things. So quietly pushing you out of the law firm means, you're not getting as much work as other people. People aren't giving you work. And then in addition to not being given work, you're not given like positive reviews and people are just kind of freezing you out. So the most important thing that anyone can do is to always have work. If you have a lot of work to do, then there's really not the law firm doesn't have an incentive for letting you go, because if you have enough work to do, that shows that that people like your work, you're getting repeat work, that the law firm has enough business to pay you. And so if you're not getting enough work, and other people aren't giving you work, then you're probably being pushed out. If other people at your level or in your practice area have a lot of work and you don't, then you're in trouble. And so you should start looking for a job immediately. It's absolutely crucial. You need to use Law Crossing, Indeed, whatever, LinkedIn. Those are decent sites. Reason I promote Law Crossing is the site I found, and think it can help you a lot. Is it costs thousands of dollars for people to post jobs on LinkedIn and Indeed. Most law firms post openings that they have on their website, and so those jobs aren't advertised. So if you go to Law Crossing, you can see those, and so you should be looking at as many different sources of jobs you can. But if you aren't getting work in your firm, then that's a sign. That's the most important sign that anybody can have. And if you're not getting work, then the odds are that you're being pushed out of your firm if other people are getting work. So that's kind of the most important thing. Sometimes, you'll just get very negative feedback that will make it look like you don't have a place there, and that can hurt you as well. So you just going to be very, careful about all this sort of stuff. Your next question: how do I avoid getting fired during the downturn in my law firm's practice area? Well, if there's a downturn in your law firm's practice area, then there's usually going to be people in the law firm, partners and things, that have work and ones that don't. So the best way to avoid getting fired is to try to network with the people that do have work. Sometimes you can get work in other practice areas, but the most important thing is to stay busy, because if you have hours, then the law firm isn't going to want to let you go. They're going to keep people around that have the work. So, and the other thing too that's important, I talked about having access to work. A lot of times, there are firms you can go to that have a lot of work and they consistently have work. Sometimes middle market firms that don't serve the largest clients and don't have the largest bills have more consistent work. So, but if there's downturn in your law firm's practice area, and if that downturn looks like it's something that will be there for a while, then you need to, either look for a new job, or you need to try to get as much work as you possibly can in your own law firm, meaning you need to seek out work from people. Sometimes people will sit there and think that they have to wait for the law firm to give them work, and it's the law firm's responsibility, not their responsibility. I've talked about this example before in webinars, but I had a Ken in New York, and he was working for the New York office of a Boston law firm. And every Monday at 8 a.m. or something, the partner in that person's practice area in Boston would send out the different assignments you had for the week, and associates were expected to be at work at 8 and respond to the email saying what they wanted. And she basically said, the first person to respond to each of these that wants to do it, I'll give the work to. And so this guy, New York people come into work at like 9 or 10. And he said, I'm not going to like prostitute myself and do this. So, if the law firm has work for me to do, I'll do it. He graduated from Columbia Law School, was at this top law firm. So he never got any work. And so the law firm fired him. He told me the reason why is because he refused to, demean himself and be there at 8 a.m. to get these assignments. And so he lost his job. And because he got fired so early in his career, he couldn't get another job. I got him an interview at this one firm in New York, like the New York branch of a very powerful Silicon Valley firm. And he went in. Had a day of interview schedule or half day, and he went into the first interview, and the guy took a look at his resume. He said, "Oh, but you're not employed right now." I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, I'm sorry, but there's no reason to continue with these interviews today because we're not going to hire you because you're unemployed." And I think the guy kind of gave up and stopped practicing law. But you need to, it's crazy, but you need to, if there's a downturn in your firm's practice, you need to look as aggressively as you possibly can at any other firm that you can find. I tell the story a lot, but I think it's really helpful to understand. There was a huge recession in New York in 2008, and all over the, 2008, 2009, corporate attorneys all over the country in big cities. And I had an office in New York, and all the women there, it was like 4 or 5 women in that office. They kept trying to get people jobs in the few New York firms that might have jobs, and just kept trying to make placements in New York. And I told them, you need to send people to the suburbs and smaller markets and look at jobs. And they refused to do it because they thought they were very prestigious recruiters along with top firms. And so they got into trouble because of that, and spent months without making a placement, eventually quit and went over to a firm where they thought they could do all in-house placements. That didn't work out for them either, and they basically stopped recruiting. I had another office in Chicago, and I had a woman leading that office that had been a recruiting coordinator. And when I hired her, and just basically said, "I'll do whatever you tell me to do, and I trust you." And so she became very successful. She started making like $300,000 a year when she'd been making like 75 as a recruiting coordinator, and just said, "I'll do whatever you tell me." And so I told her, instead of trying to place people in Chicago, you need to try to place them in the suburbs. You need to try to place them in smaller markets. All these corporate attorneys are losing jobs. And so she said, "No problem. I'll do what you're saying. I'll have everyone that works in my office do the same thing." And they did. And each of them had just as good, if not better, years than they'd had before by trying to put these really talented attorneys in smaller markets where there was more demand. So if you think you're going to lose your job, you need to look aggressively for other firms that may have work in your market, or you need to look at other markets. And this is something that people often don't do, because the most important thing is to always stay busy and always have access to work. And if your firm doesn't have work, then you could be in trouble. Just remember, you always need to have work. Partners need to always have work. Associates need to always have work. If you don't have work, you're in trouble. Very good question. At my firm, there's a law clerk who graduated from law school this year, and I'm pretty sure is going to be fired soon. I want to stay in good terms with her, but from my experience of being fired, when you feel like other people knew and didn't tell you, you resent them. Do you have any advice for how to navigate that? Okay, well, I don't know that person is going to know. I mean, it's find out that they're going to be fired, and then resent you. If someone's going to be fired in a law firm, we typically want to avoid them. The reason you want to avoid them is because people will think that you're on that person's side. They will be nervous about you. They will think that you might resent them. So you need to avoid people in law firms that are likely to lose their jobs, because it will rub off on you, and you'll be associated with that negativity. So in every law firm, there are groups of people or individuals that are against the firm, and then there's people that are kind of like Switzerland and not wanting very other, and then people that are just always very enthusiastic about the firm. Law firms will push out groups of people that they think are not firm supporters, or doing things they want, or the work they want, or on their side. And they can tell very, very quickly, based on the people you associate with, who you spend the time with. If you go into offices and close the doors with someone that's unhappy, I mean, you just stay away from that, because if you become part of that, then you're associated with that. And so not getting involved in politics, trying to avoid people that are in trouble, because it just doesn't help you. It's not going to help you because those people are going to have negative attitudes. It's not going to help you because you're going to be associated with them. When I was practicing law in my second law firm, I started noticing all these people that were coming into my office and saying negative things about the firm. And I realized very quickly, like, that doesn't really benefit me, because why would I want to hear all these negative things? I'm trying to have a career. I'm trying to do very well in my firm. Why am I spending, why would I associate with those people when all I'm going to do is they're going to change my outlook and make me unhappy and all that sort of stuff. I need to be around people that are enthusiastic and are going to do well. So it's just that's how you need to think about things. And you think about things as a summer associate, you think about that as an associate, because if you're around people that are doing well and the firm sees positively, their ways of thinking, the way that they look at things is going to rub off on you instead of that negativity. You avoid people that are negative because that's a filter that that you'll start seeing the world from, and it doesn't help you. What can I do during internships or summer associate roles to avoid making mistakes that could hurt my chance of getting a full-time offer? So you're gonna, when you're a summer associate, one of the biggest mistakes is not billing a lot of hours. When I was a summer associate in a big New York law firm, I went into my first review like 5 or 6 weeks in, and I got this just horrible review. I mean, I thought my life was over. I couldn't believe how negative it was. And then some of the other people I was working with got bad reviews too. And I used to show up at work at like 10, and then I would take a lunch hour and then leave about 6. And that's what a lot of the other summer associates were doing. And then there was another woman from my law school, and she had been friends or knew this woman that was an associate there that was like her second year associate. And that woman told her, like, if you want to get an offer, you just need to work as many hours as possible. Like, that's what you need to do. So she went into her first review and was like, awesome. And my review was horrible. And so she told me that just in passing. I mean, she was competitive with me. So when she told me, she was almost like regretted she did, but she told me what that woman had said to her. And so for the next 7 weeks of the summer, I got into work at like 8, and I worked till like 10 every night. I just worked as hard as I possibly could. And at the end of the summer, they were like, you're awesome. Like, what practice area do you want to be in? We really like you. We want you to come back here to work after your clerkship. And the quality of my work hadn't really changed. When at the beginning of the summer, they criticized the quality of my work. They never said anything about my hours. But at the end of the summer, they had no criticism for my work. They were incredibly enthusiastic about me. And the only people that got offers from this firm was in 1995. It was a horrible legal market. The only people that got offers were myself and this girl. So hours, like, are you the hardest worker? Can you get work from people? Are you easy to work with? Do you stay uninvolved in politics? Do you make the best effort you possibly can? Are you gracious and thank people for giving you work? Do you try to engage with this stuff and act like it's the most important thing in the world? So that's who are the most people likely to get offers: people that they like, people that work hard, people that are going to bill a lot of hours, people that are enthusiastic. And I couldn't believe it. Like, the most important lesson I learned from being a summer associate was just billing as many hours as possible. Then I had another experience where I did a federal clerkship. And when I did that federal clerkship, the judge I was working for, he, like, when the judge writes an opinion, like, they have to trust that there's all this thinking and that everything's done really well behind the scenes. And so, like, the judge wants to write an opinion and wants the people reading the opinion to think that it's very well thought out, everything, that they really thought through things. And so, but if you make like typos or errors, or you do poor case citations that are incorrect, not blue, I mean, if you make certain mistakes, then someone that's reading the work is going to think maybe the logic here is not that good, because how could the way they think through these problems be good if they're making all these typos? And so what the judge believed is the only way for, the most important thing for him in terms of what he looked like to the people reading his opinions was if there were typos or any mistakes or misplaced commas, all this sort of stuff in the work, then there was something wrong with him. And so that was, or that his work, that he wasn't a good judge. And so I learned that, and then I went into like law firms, and I was extremely like uptight about making sure that the work quality was perfect, because I learned that from this judge. I mean, more so than making sure that the language was tight, making sure I did everything. And I would write something, and I might write a 15-page opinion. Writing the 15-page opinion might take me 12 hours, but then I would take the next like 25 hours and proof it and make sure it was perfect and that everything was perfect. And so when you work in a law firm as a summer associate in particular, or as an intern, you need to make sure that You don't turn in sloppy work. If you do a memo, like everything's perfect. You go into as much detail as necessary. You do exactly what's required of you. And you also, if you're a summer associate or an intern, you try to get advice from people that are, that have more experience, but typically even be a second or third year associate. You ask them to look at your work. You ask for help. You ask for input. And you don't necessarily have to get that from the partners. You can get it from other people, and they'll tell you what you need to do. So that would be, one of the biggest pieces of advice. A lot of questions from law firms today. How can a firm identify attorneys who may appear high performing on paper, but are likely to struggle with accountability or long-term consistency? So one of the most important things for a law firm when you're talking to candidates or when you're interviewing people, the most important thing really is their employment stability. So if someone looks good on paper, but they've moved around between different firms too much, like they've been at one firm a year, another 2 years, another one a year, another one a year, then there's probably problems with them. So when I'm prepping people for interviews and doing all that sort of thing, I always will. Let me see if I can find something for you too. Interview guide. I think is important. Interview preparation guide. Yeah. So this is kind of fun. I'll just review this with everyone real briefly. And I will try to actually send this out to everyone that was on this call today, because it's kind of fun. But I'll send this. This is something I go over, and this is for people that are on the call as well as let's see here, as well as law firms. So when I'm preparing people for interviews, I do very well preparing people for interviews. So typically, someone will go into an interview, and the odds of them getting the job based on after the interview are somewhere between 1 in 10 and 1 in 5, somewhere in between there. If they don't do interview prep, when I do an interview prep with someone, their odds of getting the position are typically around 80%. So our law firm, my candidates get probably anywhere between 15 and 30 interviews per week. Those are people that I work with, and then I will prep them all for interviews. So some of the most important things for when people are going in interviews is, and this is something that everyone on the call should understand as well as a law firm. The most important thing that law firms ask is they ask them why you're looking. So why are you looking for a job? So if someone is looking for a job because they want more challenge, they want more work, they're trying to move up, they want to get more work in their practice area, like all those sorts of things are very positive. So someone that's trying to improve themselves, someone that wants more of a certain type of work, someone that wants to work for larger clients or whatever, maybe they want to work for smaller clients and get more responsibility, but you have to have very good reasons. A lot of times people go into interviews and they'll say the culture is bad, or I don't like whatever, the pay's not good, I don't like the location, it's an hour from my house. I mean, anything, the reasons you're looking, reasons that someone needs to give to a law firm for looking have to be all positive. They have to be about upward mobility, and so or some sort of mobility that the law firm looks like a good place. So people have reasons for looking where they say, oh, my bonus wasn't good or whatever. Your reasons for looking also always need to be about you trying to improve yourself. And so anytime a law firm's interviewing someone, they have to ask, is this law firm something that's going to fulfill their career goal? It should look, anytime, by the way, you're interviewing a law firm, you should go into that law firm, and that law firm should look like the natural evolution of your career. Everything you've done up until now is because you haven't found a law firm like this, and therefore you want to be there. That's how it needs to look. And I'll send this guide out to everyone because there's a lot more to it, but that's one of the major things. So why are you looking? That's what law firms want to know. And if they don't get the right answer, then there's problems. Sometimes law firms, when they interview, will ask about salaries, and when you give an answer about your salary, you have to say, I want to behave the same as everyone else is at my level. You don't want to demand a certain salary of remote work. So those are some of the big things. But these are the questions that law firms should ask. They should ask if the people can do the work, which is one. But the biggest one is, will they commit? Is the person likely to stick around? Because that's you have to really be able to understand that. And a lot of times there'll be so many moves and things on someone's resume that it'll be, that you wonder if they're going to commit. So that's the biggest thing that law firms have to look at is, will the person commit to this job? So most people, if you see on their resume that they have the experience and so forth, look like they can do the job, but a lot of people don't look like they can do the job. The commitment is very important. The other thing is being able to be managed. Like, does the person look like someone that's going to do what we want? So anytime you start asking about salary, remote work, whatever, it's certain hours and things, you come across as someone that's going to be difficult to be managed. And so that's what law firms need to avoid too. So the commitment, being able to be managed, most times they can do the work based on their resume, and then someone has to really want the job. So if they don't want the job and they're just kind of a portion as an employee and there's no real good concrete reasons why they want to be at that firm, then that's not good. The other thing I would just tell people when you're interviewing and what law firms should look like. So people will ask, the law firms will always say, do you have any questions? And that sort of thing. Do you have any questions? And so when they're asking if you have any questions, or when you're asking if someone has questions, people will come back with things like healthcare, remote work, ability to work, at home on Fridays, getting, do they have to work weekends, like all the stupid stuff. And the questions you should be asking, the questions a candidate should always be asking are, what do you need from me? Like, what can I do to really help you? Like, what is it? Why do you have this position? And then, or what would it look like if I was here for the next 90, what would it look like for me to be really, really successful my first 90 days here? Like, what would make you really grateful that you hired me? Like, things along those lines, like what they can do for you, not what you can do for them. So anytime a candidate approaches it in a way like, what can you do for me? Like, those are the worst hires. And if you're approaching your interviews like that, you're not going to get hired. You have to come across as someone that really wants the job, that where it looks like this firm is a natural evolution of all your goals, where the person's talking in terms of what they can do for you as opposed to what you can do for them. Anytime someone sets you up in a position like, what can they do for you? Then that's not good. The person needs to treat you like a client. And this is the final piece of advice. And this may be like the most important thing you hear in this webinar, because it's extremely important. No one thinks this way. When you're interviewing anywhere with a firm, that firm is a potential client. A client is anybody that gives you work, whether you're associate or summer associate or whatever your role is. That's, you're interviewing with a client. So clients need to be treated like clients. You need to be deferential to them. You need to ask them what you can do for them. You need to tell them you're enthusiastic about helping them. You need to look like the best solution for them in the market compared to everyone else that's out there trying to get them as a client. Anytime you're interviewing with someone, they're essentially hiring, they're a client, like a partner giving you work's a client. Anybody giving you work is a client. So you need to treat them like a client. That means dressing a certain way. It means having a certain level of professionalism. It means asking them what they need. It means looking like you're the best solution for them in the market about people that can do that kind of work. So just please remember this. I mean, again, you should write it down. Anybody you're working for is a client, and you need to treat them like a client. You don't talk negatively about clients. You treat clients with respect. You thank them for the work. You act like you can do the things that they need. You make them feel confident that you're the best choice of the people to do the work for them. All those sorts of things. No one thinks like this. I don't know why. But if you start thinking about any employer as a client and treating them like that, you don't talk behind clients' backs. You don't get mad at clients for giving you too much work. You don't get mad at clients for giving you busy work. You are always enthusiastic and grateful to the client for giving you the work, and you look like the best choice in the market for someone to do the work. And just please remember this, because it's crucial. And just this particular mindset can change the direction of your career in life. If you understand that, you will do incredibly well. And very few people understand this, because when you start treating everyone like a client, your career changes, and it changes for the better, and it will change fast. So just think about that for everybody you deal with, including clients. But everyone needs to be treated like a client. Clients are treated with respect. Clients are thanked for the work. You try to get extra work for them and all the sorts of stuff. Okay. Are there warnings in law school that I might struggle to keep a job at a law firm later? So when you're in law school, the law school doesn't teach you how to work in a law firm. It just teaches you a bunch of crap that has absolutely nothing to do with that. So the warning signs in law school that you might struggle to keep a job in a law firm later, you don't have to be particularly engaged in law school. People that have done horribly in law school, like have been the last in their class, who come out and had incredible careers doing personal injury, politics, whatever, or even working in a law firm. So in law school doesn't teach you really how to work in a law firm. The most important thing in law school really is to just do the best you can. And then when you interview with law firms, learn the stuff that I'm talking about right now. You're going to struggle to keep a job in a law firm if you're unable to focus. But the other thing that's important, and this is something that I recommend everybody think about, because if you don't have this one characteristic, you're not going to be a good attorney. So you may not even have this one characteristic right now. And if you don't have it, you should think very carefully about, do you want to be an attorney, and is this something that it matches your interest, and is it something that's suited for you? So the most important thing that attorneys need to have, and law students, is you need to have a profound interest in solving other people's problems. Like, you just have to be very, very interested in that. If you're not interested in solving other people's problems, you're not going to be a good attorney. You have to want to solve other people's problems. And a lot of people don't think this way. They think, I want to make money. I want to do all this. I want to work at the most prestigious firm possible. But that's not what you do as an attorney. Your job is to solve other people's problems. And that's just how it is. You solve companies' problems, you solve individuals' problems, and you have to actually take an interest in that. You have to be more interested in solving other people's problems than yourself, to a great extent. The more interested you are in solving other people's problems, the better off you're going to be. I'll tell you one quick thing that could change the direction of your career in life too. So I remember Quinn Emanuel started, it was kind of led by John Quinn, and then there was another guy there, Bill Orcutt, that was very good at bringing in business. And then they had this guy Emanuel, is very good at coming up with ways to write and stuff. But Quinn would go out to a client, and the client would say, why should I give you this work? And he would say, because if you give me this, I'm going to eat, drink, and sleep this. I'm incredibly committed. I'm going to do whatever I can to win it for you. And he meant it. Like, he actually meant it, and he would do it because he was so invested in solving other people's problems. That's what he did. And that was what the firm did. And he grew it from, when I was there, from 40 attorneys to over 1,000. And he really had that way of thinking about things, and clients like that. So if you're an attorney, you're not interested in solving other people's problems, and you don't think that that's your goal, then, and you can learn that later, but you have to have that one thing. And if you don't have that one thing of wanting to solve other people's problems, you're probably not going to be a good attorney. A doctor that's not interested in saving people's lives, or changing the direction of their lives based on doing good medicine related work, is an important thing. There was this woman I was dating, she's a psychiatrist, and she became a psychiatrist because she learned that she could treat people like schizophrenia and all this sort of stuff by giving them medicine and changing the direction of their lives by diagnosing them. And that became her passion. So people that are doctors have to be passionate about helping people. People that are attorneys have to be passionate about helping other people. A doctor that's not interested in helping other people, like solve their diseases or whatever, thinks it's stupid, or doing surgery, is not going to be a good doctor. And you wouldn't want that. You wouldn't want to hire an attorney that wasn't passionate about solving your problems. If you were, accused of some sort of crime and you didn't do it, I mean, you would, even if you did do it, you would want to hire the attorney that you believed was most interested in your thing and could help you, and the most passionate. So that's important. If you don't have that, you're not going to do anywhere near your potentials. Think about that. Think about that if you're practicing. And thank you, by the way, for all these questions. They're great questions. And just, more questions people have, the better. So just, if you have more questions, or please ask them. Okay, if you're approached by a negative employee complaining about a partner, what do? Walk away? I thought some people complain to find allies, although very weak allies. Yes, so anybody that's having problems, in order for them to feel good about themselves or to feel okay, they're going to want to seek out people that are going to take their side. And if you take their side, you're basically going to be part of the problem. So what do? Walk away? I think that actually, you don't even need to respond. You just need to say you need to do something else. There was a guy I knew that became extremely successful. I went to high school with him, and he just became like incredibly successful. And he was like probably one of the worst students in my class, and just not that intelligent. You could pick up on it very quickly. But I remember I was like in 10th grade, and I used to walk up to him and I would complain about different people and say negative things about different people. And he would never respond. He would always just kind of say, I got to go. Or, if you're talking on the phone, you would do that. If you're doing it in person, you'd find something else to do, and just never responded. And just in his life and career, became this very well-known person. There's just had all these friends and give him work. He became a well-known movie producer. And so I think that that's important. Like, if you if you try to associate with negative people, it's just going to rub off on you. You're going to start feeling negative. So why would you spend time around people that are going to hurt your career and hurt how you feel about your firm? You try to associate with people that are positive and not negative. I remember there was a guy who was very rich. He lived on my street. He was worth probably $50 million or maybe more. And he was in a second marriage. And with his wife, he would always he would only let her be friends with certain types of people. And he would literally like meet the wives that because he knew meet the wives of the people that his he would meet the wives of the people that his wife wanted to be friends with. And he would only let her be friends with people that were in happy marriages and where things were going well. He didn't want her associating with women that were in bad marriages or getting divorced and stuff. And I thought that was very interesting because what he learned, he said, and I kind of became friends with him, is that any woman that starts associating with women that are going through a divorce and having problems, like that just changes her whole outlook. And she starts looking at her husband negatively too. And because she's surrounded with negativity, and then she could end up getting divorced. And to make a long story short, I know so many men in Malibu that have gone through these traumatic divorces, and a lot of them have said to me that it all started because my wife was associating with all these negative people. That you might have met the wife, and the wife, was not out of a privileged background. And all of a sudden, healthy in her whole life, and everything has changed. And then her friends all start getting divorced and looks at her husband negatively. And so a lot of, and I'm not saying that that's why women get divorced, but I'm just saying that the people that you associate with are going to really will determine how you look at things and can change the direction of your career and life. I saw one guy. Well, I hear it all the time. I'll talk to associates and things in different law firms, and some of these law firms may have been around over 100 years. And they'll say things to me like, I'll say, "Why are you leaving?" They'll say, "It's just things are so negative around here, and it's just it's toxic environment." But I've heard this like for law firms like 30 years, 25 years ago, and these law firms are still in existence. They're still around. They're still doing well, and they're still the top law firms in the world. And so every law firm is going to be negative if you're associating with the wrong people or you're allowing yourself to be part of that. But that's just bad news. Just stay away from it. If someone asks if I can get a copy of the slides, sure, I will send. Make sure I send a copy of the slides to everyone on the call. I'll also send the interview guide that I showed everybody. Let me see here. Okay. Yo, I think I'm about to get booted. Is it normally to be just barely surviving in terms of billables? Like I'm barely meeting my requirement day by day. I'm at a giant defense firm and doing construction litigation. What do I do? Try to create work or find a new job? No, two things. The first is to create work. So if you're given an assignment, you can always build more hours on it. You can proofread the work. You can find extra cases to support what you're doing. If you're in a transaction, you can find additional aspects of the transaction you can work on. You need to build a lot of hours to what you're doing. So if you're given an assignment and you work 20 hours, but there would be a way for you to work 50 hours, work 50 hours. It's not your responsibility to write off the work. If the partner thinks you work too much, they will take your billable hours and they will write them down, and they'll bill the client for 25 instead of 50. But that doesn't concern you. What concerns you is making as many hours as you possibly can. When I was at this giant New York law firm in Los Angeles, they had something like you would get, I don't know, $30,000 bonus if you build 1,900 hours. You get a 50,000 if you build over 22. I don't know what it was, something like that. So I made sure I built 2,200 hours, and there wasn't a lot of work there, but I would spend 200 hours on a long memo and research 50 cases where I needed to. I would just get the hours. And I got my bonuses and I had employment security. So you need to make sure that you're billing as many hours as you can. You can bill as many hours as you want to any matter you're given by doing the best possible job. And that's it. So it's not your responsibility to write down your hours. You work as hard as you can to make your hours or to build more hours. And that may sound unethical to you, but it's not unethical if you're doing the best work you possibly can. You just bill as many hours as you possibly can of whatever you're given. And again, I've rarely heard in my entire legal career, I've rarely heard a partner, come to an associate and say, "You build too many hours on this." Now, it does happen. There's certain practice areas like patent prosecution where where that happens, but I've literally never, hardly ever heard that you build too many hours in this matter. You need to be more efficient, whatever. I mean, it does happen, but it's very, very rare. You need to build everybody on the call, build as many hours as you can. It's not your responsibility to write down your hours, to work, do a better job in whatever you're doing. And there is a benefit to the client. If you work 25 hours on something, but you could get them an extra edge in litigation or get them a better contract or whatever by working more hours, then you do it. And that's helping the client. And it's not your responsibility to write down the hours. Now, if there really isn't work and the work you're given, you can't bill a lot of hours on for whatever reason, and there's not enough work, then yeah, you should try to find a new job. Also, if people aren't giving you work, like for whatever reason, they don't like your work or they don't like you, or you've done a bad job, or you have a bad reputation, then yes, look for a new job. But in general, you need to bill as many hours as you can. Not your responsibility to write down hours. Partners do that all the time. I saw, this is kind of a funny story, but the guy was a very successful partner at a firm I worked at, and an associate that was in the office next to, he worked all weekend. So he came in on a Friday, and he lived about an hour and a half from lived in Orange County, and he was working in downtown Los Angeles. And so he got this assignment to write this very important brief, and he had to write it by Monday. And so he worked like, till Friday at 2 in the morning, slept in his car, then came in and showered in the firm, and then, worked from like, 6 in the morning till, 1 or 2 in the morning on Saturday, and then did the same thing on Sunday. And so turned in a timesheet. He shared a secretary with a partner that gave him this work, turned in a timesheet on Monday morning, where he'd worked 40 hours or whatever it was on this brief, or 50, and just all this crazy amount of time. And then the partner that he was doing the job for came in at like 9:30 or whatever. He put his timesheet, they share the same secretary. They used to write the timesheets out. And he saw that the partner had written down that he'd billed, 35 hours, like reviewing and revising the work that this guy had done, but he hadn't. He just completely made it up. And, unethical, absolutely. But that's an example. They had a client that he knew that the client would pay for all those hours. And so he just billed all this time to him. I mean, probably illegal what he did, but that's the name of the game, is just billing a lot of hours if you can. People will have clients where they know that they can. And again, I'm not saying that this is ethical. I'm not saying it's correct, but I'm just saying that people, like that successful partner, learn that you need to figure out how to bill as many hours as possible. If that was an unethical way to do it, I'm not defending it, but I am telling you that that's your job as an attorneys, to get as many hours as you can. You create work. Creating work means you do the work, but then you figure out other ways and other angles and other ways to make it even better. Create work. You have to create work. You have to have hours. You have to do as much work as you can. And I hate to say it. I told earlier example of a guy that moved from a middle market firm to a major law firm with all his clients. And when he got there, he realized that his clients were being billed like twice as many hours, because he would give work to partners and they would just go and they would just build a hell. Like they would work all these hours, and the associates were trained to work a lot of hours, so they get hours. And so all of a sudden his clients were going to bill all this money. And so he had to move. He went to a Midwestern law firm that didn't do this because he wanted to keep his clients. But people just make this stuff up, and or just try to bill as many hours as possible. And I hate to say it, this is what you do as an attorney. It used to be that when there used to be not a billable hour. And so what people would do is they'd work on a transaction and they kind of look at it and see how many pages of, and say, okay, why don't we bill this for $10,000? And they didn't bill by the hour. They would tell a client, I can do that for X many dollars or whatever. And that's how they used to bill things out. The attorneys just used to charge what they thought the work was worth. But now there's a billable hour. So you bill as much as you can if you need to. I'm not saying it's the right thing to do, but you do the work that people will pay for. Give me a senior associate level with 8 years of experience with my firm. Next year is my turn for partnership. Two streams exist: salary partner and equity partner. I'm currently developing a book of business and trying to figure out if I want to stay with my firm's partnership or go out and build my own firm. I am a father of 2 young children under 5. Thank you, Harrison. Doing great. Thank you for the compliment. Okay, so being a partner in a law firm, and an equity partner is probably for most people, if you're working, I don't know what kind of work you're doing, if it's litigation or if it's corporate, you're usually going to be better off being a partner in a law firm. Most partners will not start you as an equity partner. They'll start you as a salary partner, and then you will have to earn your way into equity partnership. The benefits of working with a law firm as opposed to on your own are a law firm has a brand, a law firm will support you with associates and office space. A law firm will allow you to give work to other people that may not be in your practice area from your clients. And a law firm will, if you do a good enough job, will be working for you and supporting your book of business and helping you grow your book of business and giving you more long-term stability with your clients, because your clients will be more likely to want to use that brand. They'll be, law firms have brands. So if the client is in a problem, they're more secure using someone that is with a law firm with like 30, 50, 100 people than they are using a solo practitioner. So I would, if you can, I would recommend trying to become successful as a partner in a law firm, becoming an equity partner. And then with all that business, you can decide whether or not that firm is a good platform for your business and or you want to be in another platform. Maybe the other platform can pay you more. Maybe the other platform will give you better associates. I mean, whatever. But it's much easier to have a long-term career as an equity partner in a law firm generally than it is to be a solo practitioner with your own book of business, or sometimes even to develop your book of business. So you should go as far as you possibly can in a law firm than not working in a law firm. If you have two young children under 5, you're probably going to get more stability for a while as a salary partner than an equity partner. So everybody, especially if you're able to develop business, maybe you don't have enough now to be an equity partner, but you're probably going to be better off at least succeeding under that type of platform and having more time there, because you can always start your own practice area, I mean your own firm later. And why not try to develop more business under that brand before you decide to do that? So I really recommend that everyone do your best that to succeed in a law firm before starting your own thing. I'm not saying you won't succeed if you do your own thing. So many people do succeed and they think it's the best decision they ever made. But I do think that, to start, you want to try to be an equity partner. What is most common career blindsides that lead to attorneys getting fired? I mean, I think I covered most of them today, but I would say that the most common blind spots are when people don't have enough work, they think that that's okay. Or when they talk negatively about their existing firm, or they get involved in negative politics. Those are some of the most major ones that I see people getting into trouble with. I will send out the slides from this, so that can help you kind of go through all of those as well. But I think those are the major ones, and not having access to work is the most important one that gets most people in trouble. I'm just going through questions here. Some of them I've already answered. That's why I'm taking some time here. Okay, next question is, can being too focused on billable hours hurt my long-term standing at a law firm? No, you should be focused on billable hours. That's, as an associate, that's the main thing law firms have to evaluate you on. Billable hours show a lot of things. It shows commitment to helping the firm be profitable, which they like, but also getting billable hours shows that you're doing good work for people and you're getting repeat work and people are allowing you to work for them. So if you don't have billable hours, then you're probably not getting a lot of repeat work from people and people aren't impressed with your work, or they would prefer to give it to someone else that they think can do a better job. So you should be very focused on billable hours. It's really, a lot of times law firms I mean, they'll certainly be able to evaluate the quality of your work and other stuff, but having hours is going to show that people are giving you work and that you're working hard and making the firm profitable. So yeah, you need to be very concerned about billable hours. Partners are very concerned about hours. That's their job, is to get work from clients and to bill a lot of hours. And so everybody has to be focused on billable hours, and it's just how the game works. It's unfortunate, that's what it is. And if that's what you don't want for your career, then you do something else or work in a smaller firm maybe, but everyone should be focused on billable hours. I mean, just how the game works. That's what it is. And again, billable hours, that if you're getting billable hours, it's showing the firm and the management that you're getting repeat work. And if you're not getting repeat work, then you're probably not doing a good job. So that's a way for them to evaluate the quality of your work. It's also your quality of your interpersonal relationships to be able to get work. It's a quality of seeking out work. It's a quality of creating work from assignments instead of not creating work. So your job as an attorney is to create work. It's you create work if you have a client as a partner that you figure out ways to allow the person to bill more hours and to do extra work for them. And people will make up all sorts of things that people need, our clients need, and it helps the client, but at the same time, they're just trying to get extra work. Partners want to get more work from clients. They want to, do all sorts of things to help them. And I mean, it's just how it works. And you need to create work. When I was associate, I remember there was a partner, he's no longer alive. His name was John Vandekamp, and he used to be Attorney General of California. And it was kind of interesting. He had a friend that owned an insurance company in Massachusetts. And so anytime someone would come from Massachusetts in their car or get in an accident, his friend would give him that case, and then he would give them to associates to do just to kind of so they had got litigation experience and got to run their own matters, which is kind of fun. So even though that wasn't the type of work the firm did, they would allow associates to work on these. And so I remember I used to take these cases and I would, try to take all sorts of depositions and do all these filings and things. And when I did these things, I would have to talk to someone in the insurance company to get authorization. And so I would make all this stuff that could be done, like motions to dismiss and extra depositions and, case going to trial, these motions eliminating. I would make up all this work to be done. I remember always calling the insurance company. I would have to say, this is why you need to do this. This is why you need to do this. And to get their authorization, I would sell them on getting this extra work. And I probably worked more hours on this stuff than anybody. I mean, it just went all out, but I was creating work, and the insurance company was giving me the right to do it. And because of that work, they got a good benefit from it. But at the same time, I had to create work. So you create work. That's it's the job. Okay, Can you give them not just a few questions left? So if anybody has any additional questions, I would recommend asking them now. Okay, let's see the next question. Okay, how do I generate my own book of business? I worked in a law firm as a senior attorney, then switched to work in my city's civil corporation as a senior attorney, but want to get into another step of private practice. I have a decade of private practice. I'm interested in healthcare, government investigations. Okay, so to generate your own book of business in this particular niche, you want to be seen as someone that is very good in that niche. So why would someone hire you to do healthcare government investigations compared to someone else? So you need to look like a really good choice in the market. So what does that mean? That means probably writing, speaking, creating a profile for yourself that looks like you're, very someone that, whoever would need to be defended against healthcare government investigations, like you would look like the most logical choice. So you just have to position yourself as someone in that practice area that clients would want to hire. So what are you doing? It's not enough just to say, I'm interested in this. You have to look like the most logical choice for anyone trying to hire that type of attorney. So if someone needs to be defended against, why would they hire you as compared to someone else? And so to get business, you can't just say, I'm interested in you. You feel like the best choice. So what does that mean? So if you were hiring a doctor and you had two choices, you had a doctor that was very interested in doing, let's say, I don't know, you had some sort of kidney disease or something. And there was a doctor that was an expert in kidney disease and had all this stuff in their bio that they've been doing it and that, they were an expert in and so forth. And then there was another doctor that said, I'm interested in helping people with kidney disease. You would hire the person that looked like they had the most experience. So it's just like that with clients. They're going to hire someone that looks like the most logical choice. And so you have to be able to do the same thing. And if you don't look like the most logical choice, no one's going to hire you. So you need to create a profile for yourself that makes you look like the most logical choice for a client to hire. And so it's not enough just to say I'm interested in something. You have to be able to really look like the best choice. And I think there's one other question after this. I'll just take a stab. I think I'm done. So if anyone has any additional questions, now's the time to ask them. Okay, what about if I think that my values don't match the existing partners? Yeah, so if you don't feel comfortable with the people that you're working with and your values don't match them, and you feel like that's going to be a long-term issue for you, then you should look for another job. Different firms have different values, and the people there are different, and they think about things in different ways. So yeah, so if you're at a firm where you don't think your values match the people that you're working with, then yeah, then there's nothing wrong with looking for another position. But what I would say too is that why are their values important to you? So if you're representing clients in your, for example, criminal attorney, your values aren't going to match that's your client. Your values may not match the criminals. It's not your problem. If you're defending a corporation, then you don't like their values. It's your job is not to make you know judgments about their values. All you're doing, I mean, your job is to get work from them, to take their side. And that's, again, if you're working for partners, your job is to they're the client. You do what they need. So why do their values matter? I mean, again, I mean, if it's so intolerable to you that you need to work somewhere that you can't work with them, that's fine. But you really shouldn't be too concerned with someone's values, because a job of a lawyer is to take the side of whoever's giving them work. That's it. So I hate to say that, but that's what it is. And the sooner you learn that, the better. And I've seen so many attorneys like just totally screw up their careers by saying their values and stuff don't match the firm. And it's like, doesn't matter, it's your clients. How can our firm build systems that reduce the risk of terminating employees due to preventable issues like poor onboarding, unclear expectations, or lack of mentorship? So yeah, so onboarding is good. I mean, you can onboard people, that's helpful. Having clear expectations is important, and lack of mentorship. But the point is, most people get into law firms, and people that want to succeed, they figure it out. So it's not necessarily the law firm's job to tell them to make people succeed. I mean, people figure it out, and that's part of you. If you're a lawyer working for a client, you figure it out how to do a good job for the client. So the associates are joining your firm, they need to figure out how to keep the partners they're working for as clients. So onboarding, yeah, you can onboard people, and that's fine. You can, but expectations will often be related to billable hours, and that sort of things. You can give people those expectations. Mentorship can be important, but mentorship is just again, you can give people mentors, that can be helpful. Sometimes people that are first generation attorneys, I wrote an article about this over the past couple of days, I really like it. People that are first generation attorneys will often not understand kind of the values of upper middle class people that are traditionally lawyers, and how they think about things and approach things. So sometimes that mentorship can be helpful to people. So yeah, giving certain people mentors can be helpful, and that can actually be beneficial to a lot of people's having good mentors and within the firm. But ultimately, firms are very competitive places where people have to figure it out, unfortunately. And so the systems and the way your firm works, if people don't figure it out, they're probably not going to be the best attorneys. They just need to do it. And I hate to say it, it's true. Okay, just see this one question. Almost done. I'm just trying to make sure I get most of these. Okay, what habits can I build during law school to avoid the mistakes to get new attorneys fired from law firms? So just being very, very thorough with things, not making errors, turning in the best work possible, like, just making sure that you give it your all with whatever you're doing. Law school isn't really necessarily a good training ground for being an attorney. One thing I would say that's very important that a lot of people don't realize is in law school, your relationships with other people are extremely important. So those relationships, if you have good relationships with people that are law students, those people are going to be general counsels of companies. They're going to be within firms who could hire you. You'll have a reputation. That reputation is something that will be with you. That if you do a good job, will be with you for the rest of your career. I remember John Quinn was giving a talk once to associates about how to develop business, and he said, one of the biggest mistakes I ever made was not developing better. I mean, this guy had, huge book of business. He said one of the biggest mistakes I ever made was not developing better relationships with the people I was in Harvard Law School with, because if I'd done that, I think I would be more successful. He was extremely successful. But yeah, see. Okay, next question. And this person's question cut off, so I will, if you want to continue with the question, another. Yeah, I have a BS in biology and began my legal career at an AmLaw 100 law firm where I worked for 2 years before lateraling to another law firm an additional 2 years. After that, I completed a 2-year federal clerkship. I was offered an opportunity to serve a term as an assistant United States attorney, but ultimately decided to return to my firm's patent litigation group. My hesitation was accepting the AOC position might disrupt my classroom, make my path back to private practice. Yes, less straightforward. Yes, so you're absolutely right. Had you become an AUSA, it would have been extremely difficult for you to get back to a firm. Becoming an AUSA is something a lot of people dream of and want to do, but it becomes incredibly hard to get back to a law firm because essentially when you're AUSA, you're trained to be a criminal attorney, and then you have to go back into a law firm as a white collar attorney, which is very, very difficult to do. So you absolutely made the right decision, probably not becoming an AUSA. Again, there's nothing wrong with being an AUSA, but it becomes very, very difficult to transition back to a law firm. And in that type of position, most people do not want to stay in that position, for the rest of their career. So then when they try to get out, it could become very difficult to find another job. Plus, the pay is not as good. And here we go. Especially since most work white collar at the patent law. That side, I recognize this will provide trial experience, which is valuable in patent litigation. If you think I made the right, yes, you made the right decision. So you absolutely made the right decision not becoming an AUSA. First of all, most cases that are in patent litigation don't go to trial. So, even if they did, I mean, you could figure out how to do trials, but most of them don't go to trial. Most of them involve just doing work and discovery and motions and settling cases. So you made the right decision, and just getting that trial experience would not have helped you. It would have taken your career off path and made it extremely difficult to ever get back into a law firm. And so you're absolutely doing the right thing. People are absolutely much better off also being in positions where they're in a niche and where they can represent large clients that have unlimited budgets to fight things. So you made the right decision. It's great that you got a clerkship that probably helped you with the writing, but that was the right thing to do. Okay, let's see, anything. Okay, well, that's it. So thanks everyone for the questions. I hope that this was very helpful to you this week because we did learn a lot about the mistakes that people make. Each of these mistakes that I covered are a lot of them are things that ended people's careers. And so just understanding these things can be very, very helpful. One thing I would say is it's very smart to watch these webinars. I get emails at LinkedIn sort of every week where people that say that, they did one of these webinars, they've been watching them and their whole life and career changed. And so most people don't put the time into learning about the steps they can take in their career to make them more successful and avoid mistakes. And so I just would say, congratulations on spending time doing this. It's even if you just pick up like one thing or a couple things, like we talked about treating firms as clients, we talked about wanting to help clients, and that's your goal, to making sure you create work and all these things. Each one of those, I mean, just getting one of those things could, really make a huge difference in your life and career. So thanks for being here, and I will talk to everyone. I'll be back next week.